So I declare open this public hearing of the committee. Before calling the first witnesses, I ask a committee member to move that the media be allowed to broadcast the proceedings today in accordance with the rules set down for committees, which include fair and accurate reporting of proceedings and not taking footage or still images of members, papers or laptop screens. Thank you, Yvette. The committee has come to Broken Hill to hear about the possible national broadband network rollout issues that are important to the community of Broken Hill and those that provide services for Broken Hill. This is the first regional and remote area that the committee has visited, and I extend my thanks to all those in the Broken Hill community and surrounds who have given their time and expertise to be here to speak with the committee. I also thank those who have travelled a long distance to either appear before the committee or to be present here today. I now welcome the representatives of Ninty One Limited. For the Hansard record, could you please state your name and the capacity in which you appear before the committee?
Jan Ferguson, Managing Director of Ninty One.
Apolline Cohen, Senior Research Officer.
Thank you for coming. Although the committee does not require you to give evidence under oath, I advise you that these hearings are formal proceedings of the Parliament and warrant the same respect as proceedings of the respective houses. The giving of false or misleading evidence is a serious matter and may be regarded as a contempt of Parliament. The evidence given today will be recorded by Hansard and attracts parliamentary privilege. Do you have a submission you would like to provide the committee?
We can provide a submission, but as you know, we came sort of a little late in the proceedings. We can provide it by close of business tomorrow. We don't have it here with us today, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Would you like to make an opening statement?
Certainly.
Okay.
Thank you. But thank you very much for the opportunity to present here today. Ninty One is a not-for-profit company which exists in remote Australia for trying to work towards eliminating economic disadvantage. My apologies to the people from Broken Hill that I can't stay after this, but I need to actually get back to other things in other parts of remote Australia. So my apologies that I won't hear your submissions, but I will read Hansard. Ninty One is a management company behind the Cooperative Research Centre for Remote Economic Participation and works to provide solutions to economic disadvantage in remote Australia. We work at the macro and micro levels of the economy and systems issues that affect economic development in remote Australia. We work in the arts, tourism, pastoral industries as examples, and we work in them because the multipliers to the communities are actually greater and the economic advantage to those communities is actually greater. We also have in the past developed technology which was designed to address some of the issues that remote communities face in accessing fast ICT technology. But to date they've been not taken up, and I'm happy to take questions on that a little later as to why and what they're for. But I'd particularly like to set the scene for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Australians as they are impacted by the lack of ICT access. It's not the only part of remote Australia we work with, but we thought it was best to outline the significant disadvantage that exists for those people, because I'm sure others will bring the broader part of the community to bear. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders are 2.5% of the Australian population. 38% are aged under 14 compared to 19% of the general population. The median age is 21 compared to 38 in the rest of the population. 46% of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders live in outer regional areas and 25% live in remote or very remote Australia. The average household income for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders is $460 per week compared to $740 for the remaining population. In remote areas, this declines to $296 a week. Only 1 in 10 Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander kids have access to the internet. We believe, based on our research which we've been conducting now for close to 10 years, that high-speed internet access is essential if this outlook is to change. It's essential for access to markets and it's essential for access to services. There's precious little you can access about a government service unless you have access to some form of internet connection. And the more photos it has in it, the less capacity you've got to access it if you're living remotely. The current situation in remote communities is that they have very basic telephony and it's often out of order. End users conduct their business over a public telephone, and I can give examples of that if the committee decides they'd like to hear it. Mobile coverage is very poor in remote Australia. It's claimed that 99% of Australia has access to mobile phones. Well, I can assure you where I come from in northern South Australia, I've got to go to the top of the hill to get any mobile phone access. I don't have it anywhere close to my home. I'd put it to you, given the range of technologies that you're all using here today, that you and me included, can't function now without a functioning computer or access to a phone, and preferably an iPhone at that. We would also suggest to the committee that it's not in the public interest in biosecurity terms, safety, disaster management, or the perpetuation of disadvantage for this situation for very remote Australia to have such poor access to the current bandwidth speeds. The world's moving at an exceptionally fast pace, and two of the sectors in which we work with, arts and tourism, require internet access at fast speeds to have any kind of a market share. We also know from our research that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people are very fast adopters of the new technology, and where we've worked particularly with kids to get them to pick up good skills and be able to use the internet, they've been successful internationally, and one group we work with won the Lonely Planet DVD competition as a result of that work. Without ICT, none of that's possible. It also allows the capture of cultural pursuits which have significant health and wellbeing and economic impact for people. At the moment, only 1 in 5 Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander households has access to the internet, whereas 4 out of 5 other Australians have access. In the Northern Territory, for example, very few communities outside of the growth towns have any access at all. One of the impacts of this is it severely limits the capacity to bring in any kind of health change, because a lot of visiting specialists and the like need to be done by fast teleconferencing or video conferencing services, and if you don't have the bandwidth, you just can't do it. We did a report initially, some years ago, into access, found it to be very poor. We then looked at what sort of technology would change that, and we developed a piece of technology that would distribute the internet at the community level. We had real difficulty in getting any take-up from any telecommunications entity, because we work in the area of market failure, and there are not the customers to actually bring in enough cash for them to be remotely interested in investing in it. This technology was made in 2008, cost $1,000 and was made with readily available component parts. Due to the lack of income streams, it just wasn't taken up. And in summary, in the areas that we work in, we work with abject poverty, and to change a lot of that abject poverty, we would contest that we need high-speed, low-cost internet access to change people's access to markets and services. As I said, I can provide you a written report that provides you with all the sources of this material by tomorrow. We would recommend to the committee that other technologies should be explored to provide low-cost, effective ICT solutions for remote Australia, whether it's Aboriginal or non-Aboriginal Australia. It's really important that we have low-cost options. We'd suggest that a report be commissioned to establish a program to serve remote Australia with implementation of cost-effective ICT solutions. Government assistance programs for internet access should be provided for shared community access of Wi-Fi networks, community account holders and billing options, and more funding is specifically needed for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders' access to effective ICT. So thank you for the opportunity, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you. Did you want to have an opening statement at all? Or?
No, I'm fine.
Okay. Can you, I think you made reference to the technology development that you've been involved in. Do you want to give us some details in regards to that journey as to what it was and how compliant or...
With one caveat, that I am not the most technically competent to talk about this, but I can give you, as the Managing Director, what I
You're amongst
understand.
friends.
Yeah, that's right. I don't want to in any way profess that I'm, technically competent in that space. But in partnership with the Old Desert Knowledge Cooperative Research Centre and the University of Wollongong, we developed this mesh technology that if the internet came into the community via satellite, it could then be beamed around the community at very low cost. And we trialled it particularly in the pastoral industry space, where we've developed some other very exciting technology about precision pastoralism, and we used this web mesh network to beam information from the station out to the various bores, and provided you had line of sight, there wasn't an issue in beaming information over about 3 kilometres. And as I said, the component parts were about $1,000 at that time in 2008. Now, at that time, we were combining it with telemetry and a whole series of other pastoral pieces of technology, but this was just about testing in real time whether that would work, and it did. We tested it in Aboriginal communities where we were bringing the internet in by satellite and then using our web mesh network to beam it around the community, and you got access. Sorry?
So I just wanted to say that you can go actually up to 150 kilometers, which is really interesting in the case of, then going to an exchange or a growth down for outstations in remote communities.
So in the pastoral sense, we tested it over 3 kilometres because that was the line of sight we had, but you can take it up to 150, as Apolline said. So, but we tried desperately through a whole series of opportunities to get this trialled extensively through communities, and we couldn't get anybody to buy it. We worked with Telstra and a whole series of other companies, but there is not a financial trail of customers paying them a fee each month to make it worthwhile for them.
Okay, does anyone want to... Oh, I've got a series of questions, but I'm conscious of time, so Deputy Chair... What's it? Oh, you're right. I'll flick it to everyone else. Susan, do you want to...
I probably have the same questions as the Chair, but do you have a response to some of the costs that you have heard mentioned regarding what the NBN, once built, would cost to customers?
Only in the context of the average household income. If you've got $296 a week, then it doesn't leave you an awful lot to actually engage in that system. So if you are really at the poor end of the system, then the figures that I've heard, you wouldn't actually be able to engage. And we have done some work which I could refer you to around relative levels of poverty, and $20 makes a huge difference to somebody's relative level of poverty on $296 a week. So we don't believe people can effectively engage on the figures that we've seen when their average household income is only $296 a week.
And a typical household, what would be the main benefits, I won't say of the NBN, but of fast broadband for that household? And I know it's hard to pick a typical one, but please just try.
Well, look, in terms of the work that we're doing, we're finding that communities genuinely want to engage in the real economy, but that comes down to how do you do that? And when you only have a public payphone, then that is exceptionally difficult. And we've done a lot of work with Aboriginal communities in understanding value chains. And so once they understand a value chain, they don't want to be a price taker, they want to be a price setter. And it's very hard when you're putting your 20 cents in the slot at the payphone. So what we would suggest is that if the internet was coming into their community and had multiple use capacity, then they would take it up very fast. And they would actually... The evidence that we have from Africa, from South Africa, is that people's employment opportunities increase by 15% if they've got access to mobile phones. So we can only assume that if you actually extrapolate that out with access to the internet, people's employment opportunities will increase in the same sort of dimensions as they have in Africa.
Thanks, Chair.
Can I just follow on from that? You did talk about recommending high-speed, low-cost options and the average household income. I mean, to achieve that, what sort of cost do you consider is reasonable that a household with that sort of income is going to be able to afford?
We'd like to actually suggest a slightly different model, which is that it isn't at every household, so that it comes into some community facility. I mean, people in the bush are fast adopters of technology. They'll pick up an iPad, an iPhone, or whatever else. But they don't have the access. We would suggest that if it came into the community, a lot of these communities only got 50 people in them, and so if it came into the community, they'll pick up the technology like the phone or the iPad or whatever. And so at a household level, we don't believe it's sustainable. They're not in the current situation have the money to sustain $60 a month or whatever the charge is. But if it came into the community and was a community-based facility, and that it's the householder thing that we think is the actual difficulty. One internet connection per household is problematic, because if you bring it into one household in an Aboriginal community or any other community, that person's going to get a lot of humbug. to get access to the internet, where if you brought it into a community facility and people can get on with their own, like you can do in any cafe in Broken Hill, and I've certainly been doing this morning. If you have that kind of opportunity, then people will access it.
And is it your understanding that that can't occur with NBN? That it won't be attached to community centres or other facilities, it can only be attached to households?
Our perception of what we've read, and obviously you're better informed than us, is that the NBN won't necessarily reach some of the communities that we're talking about. So that it will go to, like for example, just to use the Northern Territory as an example, it'll go to the territory growth towns and won't go to the remote communities that are in more isolated areas.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that, the 7% that will be offered the satellite or the wireless solution, that's the people in the bush, and we need bandwidth. And to say that, we will have up to 12 megabytes, it's, none of you work on that. It's too hard to engage at that level. So I think there are several issues there. One is access, but then speed and what's offered in the bush at the moment.
When you talk about it's a waste of time hooking it up to households, your understanding is they're not households that would be hooked up anyway because they'd be the 7%.
That's right.
So what you're talking about is, I guess what you're advocating for is that in these more remote communities, what you want to see is fast access to a community hub
That's right. I think,
and then it comes down to who pays for the access in a community setting as opposed to a home setting.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. There's not the money, not the level of disposable income to have a household internet connection in these communities, and there won't be until we make some major change in their economic outcomes.
And with that, so just to clarify, what you're saying is not just what you're advocating is not just to put those facilities in, but there need to be additional support given, because to just provide high-speed access without the training and support for that community, it just wouldn't be utilised to its full extent.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Chair, can I just one quick question?
Yeah, sure.
On that issue. So you, in terms of the mesh network, which I understand is what drives one laptop per child, as an example, so your research paper that you, the research that you undertook, we were able to have a look at that. And
Certainly it's publicly available on the net.
great.
It's not. We're a publicly funded research institution. Nothing that we do is secret.
But that goes to the issue of shared community access as well?
yeah, but because basically once you bring the the connectivity through we call it the same technology, so that mesh network, then it's available in the whole community and possibly to other outstations if they're not too far. So that brings a communal sort of access, which is really important and really good.
I think somebody's technology is working. Malcolm?
So your idea would be in these remote communities there'd be a community centre with broadband access, right? And that would be presumably with a number of terminals, that enable people to, like an internet cafe in effect.
That's one model, and that was certainly done through some of the rural transaction centres. We'd suggest that people will, by a whole range of means, access the technology. What they don't have access to is the Wi-Fi network to work off. The Wi-Fi comes into a lot of these communities, to schools, police stations, whatever else, but it's very, very protected systems. What we'd be advocating is that it came in and they could pick up their own technology, whether it's one. We're not advocating universal technology. What we're advocating is that the Wi-Fi comes in and you allow people to pick it up as they choose, and they will, from our experience.
But your understanding is that the NBN's model in the remote communities you're talking about here would not be fixed wireless; it would be satellite, and it would be satellite delivered to the household. Mm-hmm. And I gather you're saying you think that is going to be A, too expensive, and B, expose the owners of that household, to the residents of that household, to a lot of humbug. Yeah. So what you're saying, are you, is that there should be in effect, a Wi-Fi base station that picks up that runs off that satellite signal and then connects the satellite through Wi-Fi to that broader community.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so what that means is we have a bit of an issue with the user pays model in the bush, because if any of you go out there and roll over and you need someone to take you to hospital and need someone to deal with your belongings in your car and everything, one of us goes and does it. We don't say, can we have your credit card please, and can you pay us for this before we go and do it? We just do it. So, but when it comes to some of these other things that get pushed out, it always comes out with the user pays model. What we'd be advocating in this, not just, we're using the example of Aboriginal communities because they're the most stark, but the reality of it is if you had a model where Wi-Fi came into some of these remote places and the community generally could have access of it with the technology there by themselves, you'll get far more change and you'll get better public safety outcomes, a whole series of things. If we have a biosecurity problem, you've immediately got the capacity to deal with it because everybody's technology is going to work.
And your mesh works with satellite?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
we're not here.
The beauty is that you can connect it to wherever copper, or say you've got a gross town such as Intertop and Maningrida, which got then 33 smaller communities in a range of 200 kilometres. All those smaller communities where people reside and really want to live and do stuff can be connected.
And look, we're not here advocating our technology.
No, it's just interested whether it's adaptable.
Yeah, what we're advocating is that when we tried as a remote organisation to find a solution to this problem, you get into the market failure problem where there just aren't enough critical mass of people to pay the money to get anybody to invest. So nobody wants to actually do it. And
I don't think anyone imagines it's going to be a highly lucrative commercial proposition.
Well, neither did we, and we would have liked it, taken up as some sort of community service obligation. But we believe that we will get significant outcomes for Remote Australia for everybody if we can actually get the model to be tweaked slightly to take account of those issues.
Yeah.
Now, have you had any communication with NBN Co or government at all?
Yeah, look, we have.
Formally?
I was going to say, in terms of this, yes, we have.
And how did tell us the journey?
Look, we're great advocates of government, so, I say this with some element of sensitivity, but, we've been to the various government departments that over many years that have been responsible for this process. And what we were advocating was, can we get enough money to run a field trial? So can we actually see whether what we believe from our trials that we've funded, can we get, access to, I think it was $1 million we were asking for at the time, to actually see whether this will really work and whether people will pick up the technology and really make it work. And we've tried endlessly to do that and not been able to get anybody to take it up, because you get the sort of figures like 99% people have got access to, mobile network. Well, I can assure you, when I travel around remote Australia, I get to a certain point and it just stops, and I might pick it up at a mining site or, something or other else as I travel around, but you don't universally pick it up. I mean, I lost it just out of Broken Hill here yesterday. So, it's not universally available, it's patchy. And so what we were trying to do by talking to all the relevant people at the time, including Telstra and other, telcos, was to actually look, let's have enough money and just trial this. Don't care if it's our technology, just trial it so that we can see whether this works. Because if it does work, we change the connectivity of our country. This is a national issue, not, it's broader than any of us. And if we do it and we do it well, then we position the country universally differently.
And did you get a blanket no and a series of explicit reasons why, or you just got, the bowl of jello bureaucracy that sort of, you just don't know what they think?
Look, my personal view would be is this really a problem?
Right.
And it depends where you live, whether it's a problem. And, if you live in the CBD, it's not a problem. If you don't live in the CBD, then it's a problem. So, I think it was more people going, well, yeah, we sort of understand that this might be a good idea, but, whose problem is it really? And, it is a problem for people who live in remote Australia.
All right. Are there any other questions from anyone? I think you've advocated very well. and I suspect we will be in touch again.
Thank
So
you very
thank you
much.
for that.
We really...
Can I ask just a quick
Sure.
question of
Sure.
Jan and Apolline? Tell me about, just tell us about your business. How did you set it up? And you're obviously based in remote Australia. Both of you are?
Yeah, our headquarters are in Alice Springs.
Yeah.
Where do I live? I do actually have a house in Adelaide because the travel's just a nightmare everywhere else. And I've been home one night in 3 weeks.
But you contract to a whole bunch of CRCs and government programs, it seems.
We were set up for the management company behind the Desert Knowledge Cooperative Research Centre,
Right.
and we realised there was a significant need to do a whole range of things in remote Australia. And so we have, for example, we did the research into why camels were a problem in Australia. And what we learnt from that is that there's a thing called desert syndrome, which is very much applies to remote Australia as well. There's about 6 or 7 characteristics that apply to everything that we do. One of those is you don't get enough critical mass. So what we decided to do was to grow the company to bring critical mass to issues that face remote Australia. We put in a new bid for a completely new CRC. We've got 54 partners in the CRC, 30% of which are Aboriginal organisations, about 30% are private entrepreneurs who choose to invest in us. And in the Camels project, there are 19 partners. A whole series of our other projects. There's multiple partners where on their own they couldn't do what we need to be done, but if we come together in the bush, we get critical mass and we can do what we need to do. And we get enough money to run a small secretariat that goes out working with these problems to try and understand how we make an impact. We're particularly good at a two-way model of involving Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal Australia. So we work together, and we have a very good model of actually establishing what we'd call a true bush view by our researchers being people who live and work in remote Australia. We have people obviously come from the coast, a lot of very intelligent, very smart people who need to come in, because we can't maintain that expertise where we are.
I'm told there are a lot of smart people in Port Macquarie.
But we do, people fly in and out, that's just the way it is. But our model is very locally based. Yeah. So we currently have 29 Aboriginal researchers on staff.
And I can strongly advocate that out for they're the real deal.
Good. Thanks, Jane.
Okay.
Thank
you very much.
Thank you for attending today. If you have been asked to provide additional information, could you please forward to the Secretary? We've given you till the 8th of August. You were saying to tomorrow. Yeah, I think you can have a bit of time
to
prepare your work. So thanks for that.
Thank you very much for your time.
Now, I gather on behalf of the local member, there's a couple of locals from Broken Hill who might want to have 2 minutes to express a view one way or the other on the National Broadband Network. So if you'd like to, I think there's 2 in the room. Or...
Certainly, Mr. Goff.
Yeah, grab it. So it is 2 minutes, which is the equivalent of 25 words or less.
There's Mr. Goff and Mr. Looney, so Mr. Goff, if you'd like to come forward.
Yeah, so please come forward. And then the only thing I would ask from you is that you take a seat, feel free to take a seat, and that you identify yourself before you say some words. And I'm not sure whether we'll have time for questions, but over to you.
All right, why not?
Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Hugh Goff.
Please sit down so the Hansard can record appropriately.
My name is Hugh Goff.
And I represent a couple of local businesses. One a small bed and breakfast, and one is I'm developing a website. I brought this book along with me, which is in fact the best hated man in Australia. I brought it along because it was launched in this very room on the 13th of August last year. It's about the significant years of Percy Brookfield. And Percy Brookfield was perhaps, you can draw some parallels, he held the balance of power in the Legislative Assembly of New South Wales at one particular time. He was shot and gave his life on the railway station at Riverton. And his funeral was held in this very building. And there were over 15,000, it's reported between 15 and 20,000 mourners at his funeral. One of the biggest funerals ever held in Australia. This building, to me, and I hope to a lot of other people as well, represents part of what is Australia. It's what makes Australians Australian. It's just a part of our history. My emphasis is really on how quickly do we get the NBN. I had been given to understand some months ago that it was just a fait accompli and Broken Hill was to be the first place to get it, and I've subsequently learned that we have to plead and we have to put our case forward in order to get it in a timely fashion. I draw your attention to the Miners' Memorial, which sits on top of our skimp stump, and there are over 800 names of miners who've lost their lives in the process of extracting the wealth out of the ground in Broken Hill in order to fund the industrialisation and the development of Australia. In building a website, which is quite simple to remember, is visitbrokenhill.com, I'm needing to absorb what is it that makes Broken Hill unique. And there's absolutely no question in my mind that it is unique. And one of the things that I've discovered is that there is a great sense of debt. You owe us is something that is prevalent throughout our community. And the you, interestingly enough, in this case, is the rest of Australia, particularly focused on Canberra and Sydney, and to a lesser extent Melbourne. But there is an enormous sense of debt. And I think that you, as the Select Committee for the National Broadband Network, have got a fantastic opportunity to help make a degree of reparation relative to the NBN. Fast internet connection is vital to our area. And I say, what do we want? We want the NBN. When do we want it? We want it now.
Well done. Thanks for that. And if you could just identify yourself when you sit down, and thank you for that evidence, Hugh. I was worried where you're going in reference to that book and who you're referring to amongst the committee members, but thank you.
Okay, my name's Gary Looney and I'm from Menindee, 100 kilometres away. Yeah, you got me on the hop a bit, but here we go. I don't necessarily believe that speed is everything, although I appreciate the NBN and what it could bring for us. I think one of the key things that maybe should be looked at is quality of provision of service. Businesses often use the word confidence, and if you're sitting at a computer ready to do some work and your connection goes down, how does that affect confidence? So if you're at a computer and it's a little bit slower than you want it to be, you can get by. We all do. We learn to live with what we've got. But I think one of the biggest issues, I believe, is quality of service. And I've looked at the amount of uptime that's required under the regulations that we've got existing at the moment, and for whatever reason, in practice, it seems to be non-sufficient. So that was one point. Another point that I feel strongly about is teaching people to use the computer and how it can help them, and getting elderly people to use the facilities that are available. They're not going to take it on naturally. I don't think that just because you provide a service that necessarily you're going to get organic growth from it. I believe that's just too simplistic. You can give someone the fastest internet in the world, but unless we've got people that know how to use it, why they want to use it and what they want to do with it, I'm not sure that we're heading in the right direction. I think if we're going to be a technology-savvy country, we need to put a lot more effort into training our people and encourage them to use the services. We have a rural transaction centre in Menindee. It has the computers in there. People don't necessarily use them, which is why I make the point. I'm there, I use the computer quite a lot. I use it to talk to people, like you. And so I hope you listen sometimes. But I'm sitting in the computer room by myself. Going back nearly a decade ago, it was also the case. We had another transaction centre type arrangement with computers previously, and I injected thousands of dollars worth into it and got myself an education. So I just went there each day, paid to use the service. I was the only one there day after day after day, and the people that ran it got government funding. So, it's interesting that maybe if I wasn't using the services, that it never would have started or never would have proceeded. The other interesting part about it is that I lobbied very hard for the first computer centre that was in Menindee for some years, and gave the reasons that I give today why I thought we needed it.
All right.
So that's about it.
Yeah, thank you very much, and thanks for taking the time to travel from Menindee to be here today. I really appreciate it.
I'm happy to listen as well, so it's
How's
all good.
everything at Menindee at the moment? Plenty of water?
We're happy, yes.
Yeah.
Yep. I think everybody's pretty
All right, thank you. All right, well, with the committee's agreement, we'll now suspend for a lunch break and resume at 1 o'clock. So I think it's about, what have we got, 50 minutes for a break? And see you all back here then. Thank you. So thanks everyone again. I now welcome the representative of the School of the Air. For the Hansard record, could you please state your name and the capacity in which you appear before the committee?
My name is Michael Wilson. I am a consultant to the Northern Territory Education Department. I cannot speak on the Northern Territory Education Department's behalf. I don't have that authority. But I have been involved in the School of the Air for quite a long period of time, and I'm designing the network and designing the software that runs over the School of the Air.
Okay, thank you. Although the committee does not require you to give evidence under oath, I advise you that these hearings are formal proceedings of the Parliament and warrant the same respect as proceedings of the respective houses. The giving of false or misleading evidence is a serious matter and may be regarded as a contempt of Parliament. The evidence given today will be recorded by Hansard and attracts parliamentary privilege. Do you have a submission you'd like to provide the committee?
I have a written submission that I've provided. I'd like to work through it a little bit later. I have a few words I'd like to say before that,
Sure,
if I may.
which was my next question. Would you like to make an opening statement?
I would. And first of all, too, I'd like to thank you directly. I believe that my appearance here would not be possible without your direct intervention. I'd also like to acknowledge Mr. Paul Fletcher, who's taken a big interest in this area.
Great.
I'd like to get technical for a very brief minute. It's imperative that I do this. I promise not to talk about bits and bytes or the speed of light. When we send information around the internet, we do it in little packets. These little packets are just like little parcels that, with the data inside. We have an address on the front, we have the sender's name on the back, and just like the parcels, we attach stamps. Some may remember attaching airmail stamps on letters, because if you didn't attach the stamp, the parcel would go by sea or by road and could take a very long time to arrive. An IP packet is exactly the same. It has stamps in the header. The packet of these stamps, the packet is called a type. The stamp is called a type of service, or in NBN parlance, traffic class. Just like in the post office, each network component, the routers, the satellite equipment, etc., inspects the packet to determine what priority to give the packet. Should I deal with the packet straight away, or can I leave it in the queue and deal with it when I get to it? I've given you a document, I'd like to draw your attention to it. It's the NBN document entitled it's Traffic Classes. It was given as a presentation. It's a separate sheet there. It's a PowerPoint presentation. Sorry for... I think you got dumped a lot of material just in the last few minutes there.
You're right.
So it's entitled Traffic Classes. And it goes through 4 types of traffic class. The NBN have identified there's real-time traffic, which is traffic class 1. There's interactive traffic, which is traffic class 2, transitional traffic, which is traffic class 3, and best efforts, which is traffic class 4. You might think of traffic class 1 as the email sticker on the envelope. Send this straight away, I need this to go straight away. And NBN have identified that as your IP phone service. So when you pick up your phone and the packets that are generated by that phone, they will be stamped with a traffic class 1, and the routers and the associated equipment will know to deal with that immediately and deal with it, importantly, without jitter, which is a word I shouldn't have mentioned. You'll see that they then have identified traffic class 2, which they call interactive video. This is, in fact, video conferencing. This is distance learning, school of the air. They then have identified 3, which is VPN, basically. I'm sure you've VPN'd into your respective offices, and what we try to do with that is try and get your keystrokes there as quick as possible. And then traffic class 4, which is web browsing, YouTube, Google, email, any other particular traffic like that. I'm a software programmer. I write video conferencing software, and I have to mark the audio and video packets with the stamp that marks the packet as an audio or video packet, and I don't mark the packets that are chat or PowerPoint packets, because we don't need the chat or PowerPoint packets to get there immediately. If they were there 10 milliseconds, 100 milliseconds, 300 milliseconds or a second later, it effectively wouldn't affect the communication. But we must have our audio and video packets arrive on time. If we don't have it, the voice becomes broken, the video becomes pixelated, and it's not worth watching, to be frank. I have another document which is the NBN corporate plan, page 93 it starts with. And you'll see on page 93 they basically do the same diagram again, identifying the 4 classes of traffic. It's this document here, sorry.
Okay. That's the next page.
Okay. You'll see they've identified the 4 packets of types of traffic. They then go on in 8.3 to talk about the fibre product. And you'll see on the following page, they specify in the diagram 8.5 that fibre will have the 4 classes of traffic on it. It will have voice over IP, traffic class 2, traffic class 3 and traffic class 4. On the next page they talk about the wireless product. And you'll notice on the wireless product, they only prioritise 1 traffic class, voice over IP. They don't prioritise video conferencing, they don't prioritise any other audio applications, just your voice over IP. On the next page, or the page after, they then go on to describe the satellite product. And once again, we have the same situation where they only prioritise voice over IP. Everything else, video conferencing, etc., goes in the also ran department. I can assure you as an engineer, I've a great experience in this. I was a senior engineer in Optus before my present position, that this is not acceptable on a network that is a shared resource, such as a wireless tower or as a satellite hub. You can, on your own physical connection, you do have the opportunity to stop everything else while you do your video conferencing. So, for example, if I was on my ADSL or fibre at home and there was a problem with this, I'd just stop doing everything else and just do my video conference. And then there's really no need to prioritise the packets because those packets will have priority. However, when you deal with a shared resource like a wireless tower or a satellite hub, you're dealing with lots of other users, and those users can be quickly, or as they can, downloading movies or any other web traffic that they may do, and your video packets, your audio packets will have no priority at all, and your stream will be completely, at times, unusable. There's an interesting note on the bottom of the satellite thing, and they say that over time the product will evolve into including 4 classes as the fibre product does. They have no timetable, they have no data rates. An NBN employee was questioned at the Australian Distance Education Conference last week in Hobart, and he stated that referred to a government and corporate service that the NBN plan to provide in about 4 years' time. I find that quite amusing because the idea that the government would provision students with satellite service in order to get their distance education raises some questions to me. So are NBN going to put 2 satellite dishes in the front of the house? One for the NBN internet service, residential service, and one for the School of the Air service? I doubt that would be the result. On a joint media release, which I've included a copy of there, the Honourable Peter Garrett, Chris Evans and Stephen Conroy obviously thought that, had different thoughts than we've seen in the NBN. Mr Conroy says the NBN will support the delivery of online learning through video and web conferencing platforms needed for the 21st century education. Training and skills development, Mr Conroy said. And a bit further, we will look at innovative education and training projects which have the potential to deliver high quality, accessible and sustainable online tools to Australian schools, TAFEs, universities, workplaces and homes. That was the Minister, Chris Evans. The program will focus on projects which help Australians to study, learn, develop skills no matter where they live or work around Australia. I have a written submission that I would like to work through if that's how you'd like to do this now.
Yep.
Okay. No questions so far? No?
Well, we'll ask questions at the end. I'm conscious of time, so we've got till 1:45, and I'm sure there'll be lots of questions. So it's up to you how much of an opening statement you want
That's
to make.
my opening statement, basically.
Okay. Do you need to work through this paper?
I would like to do it, but...
it's up to you how you want to use your time.
Just an overview. The currently proposed and offered NBN satellite solution does not support distance education, as it does not support video conferencing or have a multicast functionality, which I didn't cover, but I think I don't need to do that. They quite plainly state it doesn't support multicast. The schools of the air in the Northern Territory have been successfully delivering ideal lessons to their students using technology that does support video conference.
Can I interrupt you, Mr Wilson, and just ask you, what do you mean by multicast functionality? Okay, well, multicast functionality, I'll give you an example of how we use it now. We have, for example, a classroom in the Catherine School of the Air. That School of the Air, we bundle the audio packets up and we send them up to the satellite as an IP packet called a multicast packet. It's effectively no different to any other IP packet, except the address on it says, send this to everyone in the neighbourhood. Don't send it to an individual computer. A multicast packet can be received by anyone who chooses to shoot. It's like a broadcast. It's like when you turn on the TV to Channel 9, you have joined a multicast stream. Mr Wilson, this is the source of my confusion. So is multicast mean the same as broadcast?
You could think of it that way.
But surely the NBN would enable you to send to stream or to send you're effectively having a conference call with a large number of people on the conference, right?
Yes, exactly.
Well, why can't it enable you to do that?
Because they don't enable multicast on a satellite or wireless network.
They've said that, have they?
Absolutely. I could point to it in this document.
Yeah.
You can read about it.
Is there any technical reason why they can't do that?
No, not at all. No technical reason. We do it now.
Have you asked them why they can't do that?
You can't. I used to work with Mr. Bob Murray, who is the head of the satellite in NBN. I worked for him at one time, and recently I did a consultancy with the Fiji Education Department. I've approached him since his new position on many occasions, and I get no reply. I'm led to believe maybe that, this is a corporate plan, and this corporate plan says no multicast, says no video conferencing.
What page are you looking at?
Well, 93 on.
No, yeah, I've got the corporate plan in front of me here.
It's 93 on. It's the corporate plan, final plan, I think it was November 2011. It's very hard. If I was an engineer and I had to work to a specification, this specification says no video conferencing. So if I was Bob Murray, if I was in charge of the satellite network and I had to do what this plan said, I wouldn't do video conferencing. I mean, the corporate plan says no video conferencing, says no multicast.
It doesn't actually. I can see at page 94. It says NBN Co will provide multicast functionality for the provision of IPTV services over the broadband network.
Over the fibre network. Then the next page it goes to wireless.
But it doesn't. Does it actually say it won't provide multicast?
I have it in writing. It will not provide multicast over satellite.
It doesn't actually say that here. But anyway, but listen, it's a valid point, and we will get it. We'll ask an explanation for NBN to give us an explanation.
It's a very important point to us. To give you an idea, on assembly on Friday morning in Catherine's School of the Year, we send one stream up, one megabit stream up, which contains all the audio and video for that class, and it's received by 75 or more students in 75 different locations around the Northern Territory. Yeah. So it's very efficient use of bandwidth. We can send one stream and we can contact literally thousands, tens of thousands of recipients by that one stream.
Mr Wilson, you said you had it in writing?
I do have it. So I may not have it right with me at this very moment. I will find it.
And what was that in correspondence with
NBN?
Yes, with
Mr Jim Hassel.
Okay. Because we've received some correspondence from NBN Co overnight, which every committee member has only just been given at lunchtime. But a quick scan of that, and whether they have written it because in trying to preempt your evidence, I'll just quote the paragraph that is at the bottom of the page for anyone interested.
Yeah, where is it?
It should be on your desk. It's underneath your computer.
Oh.
It's old technology.
Underneath my right, okay, so it's the bottom of the page.
The bottom of the page, and this final paragraph says and I apologise, you haven't seen this, we only received it at 1 o'clock. So the long-term satellite upload speeds provide sufficient bandwidth to deliver standard definition video. It is expected that the satellite services will support video conferencing and some e-health services. Now we need to clarify what some means, but it does seem to suggest they are indicating satellite services will support video conferencing.
Is that the long-term plan they're saying that?
Yep.
Yes, because I've questioned them on the long term. It's very nebulous. They're not tied down. They don't make any commitments, certainly to me.
Yeah.
And the timescaling of it's nebulous too.
Okay, well look, it's important evidence, and we will pursue it as Malcolm indicated. So please finish with your evidence, and then I'm sure we'll have a lot of questions.
Chair, just
sure.
on the point, in this piece of information that we've just received, there is a paragraph here that actually goes specifically to the point you make in your submission, and it says, as part of the long-term...
Where are you?
Third paragraph from the bottom. As part of its long-term satellite solution, NBN Co will deploy 2 Ka band satellites to provide access to the NBN outside the fibre and wireless footprint. These satellites will provide better quality services than those currently available via existing satellites and metro comparable ADSL. That's exactly what you're claiming isn't going to happen in your submission.
No, I'm saying now it isn't happening now, and any evidence that they have here, they say in the long term. I don't have that material to say, but we're talking at least 5 years out here. No, we're not talking now. We're talking.
So it's a transition type issue in particular that is the concern that you've got a service established.
Yes. And
as this is built out, you're worried that there's going to be a downgrading in that service on the way through, or that the end product...
The end point is a very interesting... I don't want to diverse again, but Ka band is a frequency way above Ku band. We presently use Ku band. Ka band is not recommended for tropical areas. It can't penetrate rain. So basically anyone above Townsville, draw a line from Townsville up, and their service will be up and down constantly. The moment it looks like raining, Ka suffers severely from weather, from rain. Rain fade, we call it. So, I mean, there's more questions. They raise more questions than they ask. But I do take your point, and I appreciate that, and I would like to qualify. I did say that when approached in Hobart, an NBN representative, about what are their long-term plans, he indicated that those services would be available in the long term to government agencies or enterprises. So his information was not to the residential person. And that's why I bring up the point, what are we going to have, 2 satellite dishes on the front yard? One for the government service into your house where you can see your doctor and take your lessons, and one for your regular residential internet connection. I appreciate what you're saying. They're rolling out a service now that doesn't do what we're presently doing. Okay. The NBN's proposed and offered satellite solution is inferior and inadequate to service the needs of the students receiving their education via satellite. If the proposed NBN satellite solution is rolled out in its present format, as they presently indicate it will be, students will be severely disadvantaged and be forced to take a retrograde step in the receipt of education. I'll just make a point here. On the 5th of July in this committee, yourself, Mr Oakeshott, raised with Mr Michael Quigley concerns that SOTA would lose the capability of video conferencing as a result of the proposed upgrade in the NBN satellite services. But Mr Quigley was puzzled as to what would be downgraded. Okay, now, it's very concerning that the NBN CEO is oblivious of the requirements of the impact and of such an important and growing sector of the community. I would like to move on here. I'd like to go on here for a little bit because the point I'm making is right now the federal government, as I go on, has removed all funding for carriage services. If you make your application to the federal government now, they say, "Oh no, carriage services will be conducted through the NBN infrastructure." About 60 years ago, the School of the Air in the Northern Territory started using HF radio to deliver lessons.
Just can I clarify how much funding? Are you aware how much funding that is?
I'll go through that if you like. Okay. I have it in the document. They used HF radio. In 2002 and 2003, School of the Air moved to interactive distance learning technology as a model to deliver lessons to remote students. This facilitated using computer technology and software at a software program called OneTouch. This provided two-way audio and one-way video, enabling the teachers to see the students to see the teacher for the first time. In 2006, IDL moved to a different program, which I won't talk about because it's mine and it feels like I wrote it. But it employs more up-to-date technology that provides multi-way audio and video, which permits the students to see the teachers and the teachers to see the students, just as like they were in the same room. In 2007, as a result of a $4.5 million federal funding, and was $8.6 million also contributed by the Northern Territory Government, under the Clever Networks program, the STARS project built a new satellite network in Darwin, which provided increased bandwidth for the delivery of education and e-learning services to remote communities and homesteads in the NT. This was a significant improvement over the delivery of IDL at School of the Air, and online education to over 200 urban, regional remote schools. The new STARS network has enabled an increase in the number and variety of education programs available and is providing superior audio and video interaction capability. As a result of the capabilities now afforded by the network and software, in 2009 the School of the Air started delivering lessons to middle years. Years 7, 8 and 9 students for the very first time could get their education. This was a significant milestone in that remote students that would once have had to go to boarding school, and imagine sending your 11 or 12-year-old to Adelaide for boarding school, for their education are now able to stay at home with their families for those tender years. The benefits to the student and family as a whole cannot be underestimated when considering remote students who experience isolation on a daily basis. The success of the project has seen other government agencies jump on board, and what started as 6 megahertz, a measure, has grown to 36 megahertz, 6 times fold. And we've now reached the maximum capacity of our transponder, of our ability, the bandwidth we have available. Initially, we had 6 venues or classrooms, if you might think of them. Now we have 72 venues or classrooms running almost at exactly the same time, almost to 72 running at the same time. Not only do School of the Air and schools have an improved service, but other stakeholders have active involvement through access to the network and the software. Examples include the Royal Institute of Deaf and Children. They sit in Sydney and deliver lessons to or aid to students with disabilities right throughout Arnhem Land. And I note in the NBN brochure that it claims that will all be possible in the future. Well, we've been doing it for quite a while. The Richmond Football Club have a studio in Melbourne, and they put their stars in front of the camera and talk to Aboriginal students in Arnhem Land and around Alice Springs, which has done a great thing to bring kids to school. Isolated Parents and Children Association hold their meetings over it, parents and teacher meetings and citizen groups, etc. These all take place without people needing to leave their homes and travel possibly hundreds of kilometres, often on dirt roads, to access these services or attend meetings. People in remote areas of Australia, in this case, and the NT have been promised that the rollout of the NBN from July 2011 will provide them with communications superior to what they are currently experiencing. However, under the current NBN models, and let's say for the next 5 years, this will not be the case, and in fact what is offered is not even comparable to what currently exists. Now, I talked about a few issues here which we've already discussed. Video conferencing, I hope you've understood that. I'm not sure whether they've come back and given you some more detail on the type of service, but quite clearly, by the way, my interest is satellite, but in researching this I see wireless is exactly the same. And in fact, where they do say they will improve the satellite over time, they do not say they will improve the wireless over time. Video conferencing through the software is as used by the School of the Air and other schools delivering distance education to the remote students, whether in the homes or communities. It won't provide video conferencing. To deliberately not provide video conferencing capability to education institutions, whether private or government run, in the interim solution is unconscionable when given the chosen architecture's capability. Multicast functionality is an efficient, effective means of data transmission, and it is inconceivable that the interim solution does not provide for this, particularly when NBN is espousing a dynamic, leading-edge technology that will revolutionise communications in Australia.
Can I just cut in? I'm conscious we've got about 7 more minutes of your time.
Okay.
This will be a submission, so if it's a case of getting this tabled, you can be confident that's in.
Okay, thank you.
I think there'll be some questions that do want to be asked, which...
I give up.
Well, no.
I give over, sorry.
I give up. So my only question is, in your view, what's the answer?
In my view, the answer, the equipment they're using, the satellite hub they're using, is exactly the hub they attended to New South Wales Education Department recently for interactive distance learning. The equipment is capable of doing everything we want to do. Unfortunately, it's not part of their corporate plan. I believe they're basically wanting to address residential, the Australian Broadband guarantee, if you like. They want to cover the Australian Broadband guarantee, but unfortunately, the funding has been removed to government, schools of the air and the like, based on the fact that NBN can now supply the carriage.
I see. So at least for a transition period, and under an option such as a USO or another means, you would like to see broadband guarantee or some sort of something that doesn't mean you've got to disable what's already in place to enable NBN Co into the future.
We have an issue in that we run out of capacity. We've been lumped with trades training centres. I shouldn't say the word lumped, but they've been very successful. But we are getting something like 30 very, very shortly. We don't have the capacity to service them. Our capacity, our present satellite network is full. It's working very, very well. It's full, and there is no more funding because the funding is to come. The equipment is to come from the NBN, and the NBN could provision that. I can tell you, absolutely, as an engineer, they could, but the corporate plan says, traffic class 1 and traffic class 4.
Okay, Deputy Chair.
that is certainly the most important question. Really, it's what you're seeking is some guarantee that the service will remain as is or get better, but you won't lose any service as far as the school's distance education. I understand that position. I just want to ask, in relation to the NBN footprint for the 93% and the fibre delivery,
yes.
Have you overlapped that with your distance education and identified whether there are areas now that only has access through wireless or satellite that would be getting access through fibre? Just wondering if there's any overlap.
There's a very small percentage of the Northern Territory that is getting fibre. Probably 50% of our population will be served by satellite or wireless. There's approximately about 125,000 people live in metropolitan, we might call fibre-related areas of the Northern Territory. The other half don't. So as a rough estimate, it's 50% of the Northern Territory will be satellite or wireless.
Okay. Thank you.
Local member? Yeah, you're right. Malcolm, do you have any...
No, thank you, Mark.
Ursula, do you...
I just thank you. I take your point about the fact that satellite capacity now is plenty if you don't have any capacity to do anything else. But in terms of e-learning innovation, are there projects in the pipeline for the School of the Air that can't go ahead, given your concerns about...
Well, what we will be doing now is, because of the training centres and others, the 20 towns that the Northern Territory of the Government has identified to be built up, we will have to withdraw services from School of the Air. We only have X amount of services. We're at our limit now. If we want to service more, which we have to, we've been long waiting for the NBN. And have been refused funding based on the NBN rollout.
And when did you make that being bundled with the training centres and the growth, the 20 growth towns? How have you been put into that same category?
We, as an education department, I should not say we, but I have to provide the solution. And the solution is we're out of bandwidth, we're out of facilities. So we must withdraw them from somewhere to accommodate the tens of millions of dollars that are going into training centres. And we have been dearly waiting for the NBN. We would dearly like to deliver lessons to residents anywhere in the Northern Territory, whether it's VET or School of the Air. School of the Air should be looked at as distance education. It is the ultimate distance education. There's a lot of lessons to be learned from the School of the Air. And it bugs me that there's been $27 million set aside to look at projects of how to do distance education. Well, come and look at the School of the Air. Other countries do. We've just rolled out 2 networks in Fiji to cover the Pacific, using the same technology that's used in the School of the Air. But people in Canberra have to put $20 million out to try and find out how to do that.
Okay, thank you.
You've suffered from not invented here syndrome.
Probably.
Mr Wilson, are you happy for your submissions, and I think there's 2 of them, to be made public documents and put on the web as part of your evidence today?
Definitely.
Thank you. Final question from me is, when we approach NBN Co about this, what in your view are they going to say to us?
Look, I have no idea what they'll say to you. I know what they've said to me, and I look at the corporate plan.
Right. And what will the Northern Territory Education Department say to us, in your view?
We'll bungle on.
Okay.
We've been good at that for the last 15 years. We'll make do. But please don't hold out that you're doing us favours.
Yeah.
Because you're not.
Okay. Look, really appreciate your evidence. And
I appreciate your time specifically. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it, and thank you for attending today and coming to Broken Hill. If you've been asked to provide additional information, and there may be some questions that come back from us as well, could you please forward that to the Secretariat by the 8th of August is a bit of a deadline we're putting on ourselves, but thank you for coming today.
Thank you.
Okay. We could now invite the Regional Development Far West to the table.
These are heaps of different submissions from different lots. So
From RDA or just from...
they've collected a whole heap of subs from people in the community. So maybe just get their take on the lot.
Okay. Okay, everyone ready, good to go? Well, thank you. I now welcome representatives of the Regional Development Far West. Where I'm from, it's Regional Development Australia Far West. I don't know whether that's a typo or you've just dropped Australia. For the Hansard record, could you please state your name and the capacity in which you appear before the committee?
Daria Turley, Acting Chair of the Regional Development Australia Far West and Deputy Mayor of Broken Hill.
My name is Linda Nadge. I'm the Executive Officer of Regional Development Australia Far West.
Paul Brown, I'm the Mayor of Central Darling Shire Council.
Lance Duggan, Commercial Manager for Perilio Broken Hill.
Okay, thank you all for coming and giving us your time. Although the committee does not require you to give evidence under oath, I advise you that these hearings are formal proceedings of the Parliament and warrant the same respect as proceedings of the respective houses. The giving of false or misleading evidence is a serious matter and may be regarded as a contempt of Parliament. The evidence given today will be recorded by Hansard and attracts parliamentary privilege. Do you have any... question here is, do you have any submissions you'd like to provide the committee? I know we've received... I gather you've been pulling submissions from all sorts of people together for us. Do you have anything extra to give us?
The RDA does have a submission to give you.
Okay. And you're happy with all those submissions being put on the website as public documents?
We do.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have an opening statement they'd like to make?
Thank you, Mr Chair. The RDA Far West welcomes the Joint Committee to Broken Hill in the Far West. With the current mining growth, the development in health, education, business, especially in our creative industries, and I know that you visited the film industry today, the RDA Far West supports the Federal Government's National Digital Economy Strategy, and specifically the rollout of the National Broadband as a key step towards this vision. We ask that in implementing this strategy that rural remote New South Wales be made a priority of the next list of released sites. The Board shares the views of business commentators such as Robert Godlison that we in Australia will be commuting via the internet. We no longer need to be based in the city to be competitive in our business, but be in a rural remote community such as the Far West and enjoy a quality of life. In this case, the Far West is ready for the national broadband. We believe that one day essential services will also be water, energy and the national broadband. With the indulgence of the Chair, we have other speakers, witnesses today, including Linda Nadge, who is the CEO of Far West, RDA Far West, Councillor Paul Brown, the Mayor of Central Darling, and Perelia's Commercial Manager, Lance Duggan.
Thank you, Daria. Thank you, Daria. Thank you again to the committee for attending Broken Hill. It's lovely to see you all here. The introduction to our submission is on the front page. We basically endorse everything that our Acting Chair Daria has just said, which is we need the NBN and we need it now. And the helicopter view of our region is as follows. We've had 120 years of agricultural and mining experience in the Far West region of New South Wales. We have an active mine here called Perilio, and Lance is here representing the interests of the company to give some insight into the NBN and technology in companies. We have agricultural interests throughout the region which are now enjoying the fruits of last year's rain, and certainly again it rained earlier this year. We have a green landscape for a change. For the last 10 years we had a very severe drought here, and a lot of the agricultural sector destocked, and only now they're just starting to restock, and a lot of the stock that is coming into this region at the moment is coming from Western Australia, where there has still been an extensive drought. So technology in the agriculture and the mining sectors are pretty special and important out here. Our region has had suffering in terms of the mining sector. We also have, as I said, 120 years of mining history. There have been some cycles that have not been so fortunate, and there have been other boom cycles in the region. The cycles have impacted most recently in the last few years with the GFC, we call the global financial crisis, and we're expecting perhaps another one very soon. Who knows? We don't know what the future holds. But we are very conscious of the fact that our region is exposed to cycles of commodities. So therefore, in response to the overarching need of our region, the local leaders, through the City Council, through the Central Darling Shire and also the village committees in our region, have endorsed the regional strategies of our region, which is to diversify our economy into several other sectors which make sense for our region. And they make sense for our region because they capitalise on our assets, for example, the Menindee Lakes, and, for example, the heritage and the arts of the Broken Hill region and also throughout the whole of the region. To give some insight into some of the future potential opportunities as well, we take the two sectors that we wish to pursue in our region in the future as being very strongly related to the ecotourism sector and the creative industry sector. So you could understand, for example, that the creative industry sector would rely extensively on information technology, communications, etc. And there are several foundation projects to these economic sectors in our region that we're pursuing at the moment. One is the proposal to nominate the Menindee Lakes area as a Ramsar site, and the other is the completion of the Broken Hill Film Studio. And both of those projects incredibly are linked, and they both are heavily dependent upon improved technology. The NBN, as far as we see, is central to all of our activities out here. The submission that we have tabled does touch on a number of the issues that we experience currently with our delivery of broadband, and as Daria has already mentioned, we are really pushing now to get that rollout here as quickly as possible. The future of our people in the region depends upon the speedy delivery. If we wait until the end of the rollout period, for example, to receive the broadband network, a lot of our strategies would appear to be quite worthless and probably not worth pursuing in 10 years' time in many respects, because we'll be left so far behind. And some of the other submissions that we have received really endorse that, from Central Darling Shire Council through Perilia, through the hotelier in Tibooburra has also sent a submission in, and also a resident of Tibooburra, Andrew Chapman, who's well known in the education circles up there. Also, the village committee from Tibooburra are also pushing. It's very, very important to the region. We also have a local business that has submitted some, I guess, case studies from their experience. They're in the IT business, and they've submitted some examples of the kinds of experiences that we have here already in the region. And I've certainly been pointing my iPhone to the sky in the last year or so, trying to do some downloads of speed tests, and the results in Wilcannia, for example, and Menindee are shocking, really, to say the least. And I have put my data in the back of that submission. And I guess to give some other... There was a comment this morning from Gary, Mr Looney from Menindee, who did mention speed was not so much his concern, but it was more about the quality of service. And I have to say that I have a problem with the speed as well. I think the speed is a big issue, because I can't function in my office 200 metres from the exchange at the speeds that I would like to operate at. To get around that, I actually have two screens on my desk, so I can work on one, while the other one I'm waiting for things to happen on the internet. So that's how bad it can be out here. And I also have put some data in the submission from us about the the quality, the lack of infrastructure, and some of the technical questions, and I'm not the technical person to talk about these things, but there are technical people in the region who can provide follow-up answers to any questions you may have. But there are certainly issues with quality of supply here, speeds and consistency of supply and speed. They're the big issues from our perspective. So without taking up too much more time, perhaps it's now time to listen to the Mayor, if possible.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman, for your indulgence. Firstly, I'd like to endorse everybody else's welcome to the committee for coming out this far to Western New South Wales. And our local MP knows the area, but obviously many of you don't. I'm appearing as the Mayor of the Central Darling Shire Council. We adjoin to the east of Broken Hill, but we don't actually adjoin Broken Hill. We're one of the largest shires in the state, 53,000 square kilometres, 1,900 residents or thereabouts. We have townships spread 200 kilometres apart over dirt roads. We are one of the least sparsely populated shires in the state, and we abut the unincorporated area, which is an area which is determined not to warrant a local government area. So we believe from those stats, and I've given you a copy of this, but we believe that in the main we will definitely be part of the 7%. We have no reason to believe that we won't be part of the 7% that aren't going to get fibre to the door. Our population depends on, at this time, satellite phone and satellite connections from rural properties. We depend on ADSL from some of our properties within our townships. In many other areas we don't have any access at all. A couple of the things that are particularly difficult are that we are dirt road joined between our major towns, and this of course provides us with difficulties as far as communicating between our own, as a local government area, our own facilities, but also with our residents and with other facilities and service providers. This is all despite the fact that we're only 11 hours from Sydney, 9 hours from Melbourne and 8 hours from Adelaide, and about 12 hours from Canberra, but sometimes it seems like a lifetime. The attached census results that we've put on the back of our submission will give you some idea of the numbers perspective of the Shire. Although there is a suggestion that some of those numbers are inaccurate, the key ones that we see are the household income, average household income, which is very low, and the age distribution within the Shire. We do have a relatively young age group coming through, and obviously many of that is an Indigenous population. The circumstance of the Indigenous in Wilcannia has been recognised by the federal government in including Wilcannia into the remote service delivery program for closing the gap. The difficulties of that, of course, are that although Wilcannia has been included, we have the same issues throughout the rest of the Shire. Closing the gap was all about several areas, in particular outcomes in health, education, employment and economic outcomes. All of these were through the improvement in the provision of improved services, and obviously these also parallel the same outcomes that are targeted for the NBN. Our confidence in telcos has been sorely damaged. It's been mentioned previously that we do have difficulty with our existing Telstra connections and provisions of services, both ADSL and mobile phone. For instance, in Wilcannia, it's not possible to accept a mobile phone call in most of the buildings within the town. That means that anyone attempting to use a Wi-Fi connection, whether they're a service provider or not, also has no opportunity. So the bad old days of when analogue first came in, when you went out and stood on your left foot in the right-hand corner of the yard and pricked your ear in the northerly direction, is almost the same thing now that we have digital. And obviously the analogue was better in some ways because you did get a continuity of service even though it was poor. With the digital now, of course, it just cuts out, you get no service at all. So that gives us a background of people not believing what the NBN's all about. We realise this isn't the forum for complaints of that type. We're recognising that the NBN is to be a new direction, but it sets the scene for the scepticism that we do feel and that you will hear out this way. For example, most of the residents in our area don't believe that as existing fibre connection runs past our townships, why aren't we going to be connected to the fibre, to the premises? We have fibre cables running past most of our townships now as part of the communications network. Why don't they believe that they'll, if they are connected or aren't connected to fibre, how will they get greatly improved satellite services when the ones they've been promised already are not operating properly in many cases? And we recognise the announcements that were made in May about improved services to some areas. They also don't understand why, if it costs us $60 a month now for an ADSL connection, which gives nice high speed for about the first hour and then drops off for the rest of the month, how we're going to get better services for lower prices. And this is where I draw your attention back to the average household income. At the moment, that constitutes about a tenth of a week's, or probably, about 3%, 4% of the income of a standard household. As we don't have copper connections to many of the houses, we don't have landlines, as the telcos have taken out existing public phones because of commercial reasons. Again, there's very little suspicion within people's minds that they will actually get services. And so in many cases the NBN as a concept is not part of their makeup. It's not part of their concept. They don't believe it will actually happen. Our youth are a particular area of concern. At this time, many of them are learning about computers through school, those that attend. If not, they're learning about them through after-hours facilities such as drop-in centres and youth centres. That is okay as long as they go to school and as long as the centres are open. As soon as they go home, there's no connection. I had an instance the other day where I saw a young girl, 14-year-old, in the back of a panel van playing with a computer. I said, that's fantastic to see. I'm really glad to see you using the computer. I said, what are you connected to? I can't connect to anything, I'm just playing with the music. But the thing was that was a literacy and numeracy adjunct to her education that she wasn't getting anywhere else. And so this...
There's a laptop in school. There's a laptop in the school's laptop.
Yes, there are, but they're not attending school. And this is where the issue is, that the non-attendance at school doesn't...
But they're working in... The laptops are working in the schools, aren't they?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
This was actually one of her own, that it was a second-hand piece of equipment that she'd been given. So, as we see it, the opportunity for our youth to develop will need to be facilitated by access in the home to bring the concept of a broader Australia, greater opportunities to come back into their home. Many people are still coming to grips with what it will actually provide, what services are going to be out there, how we're going to take advantage of it. And I must admit the previous presenter to the inquiry raised more concerns with me than I thought existed. And I'm one who's taken as on face value a lot of the comments that have been made about the NBN and its promises. Being remote, we understand that high-speed access will be most important in the main areas of concern for us, which is in educational opportunities through connections to universities and higher tertiary education, in health through access to specialist and diagnostic facilities, and yet we hear some of those may be questionable now, in local government through connectivity between our own facilities, and also to be able to engage our own residents within the process of democracy, whether it's state, federal or local. And in most important, the economic benefits, because we believe that as fuel costs increase, the need to reduce our travel to attend even meetings such as this are going to be sorely challenged, and that the access to this type of communication and technology would make a great difference. We would hate to be left behind. We're already behind. Another 10 years before we're in the front of the roll-up or get caught up with the roll-up, that puts us even further behind. It puts our children further behind. It puts our businesses further behind. And so all we can ask is, if the greatest benefits are in this NBN, and if the greatest aspects of it are present in modern day life and are going to be present in modern day life, if the remote regions have so much to gain, then why aren't we at the forefront? Thanks.
Lance, did you...
Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. I'm the commercial manager representing Perilia Mining in Broken Hill. I'd just like to outline a little bit about what we do and our history, just to set the context of some of our concerns or issues. We currently operate a mine on the south of Broken Hill, and we also have a mine that's not operating on the north and Potosi sections, which are on the other side of town. We also have some exploration leases on the outskirts of Broken Hill. We mine zinc, lead and silver, and in 2010 we mined 64,000 tonne of zinc contained metal and 51,000 tonnes of lead contained metal and 1.6 million ounces of silver. Perilia acquired Broken Hill Mine in 2002 from Pasminco. In October 2008, the GFC caused some concern around the world, and we halved our workforce, basically. We currently have about 400 employees, or approximately 400 employees, and 50 contractors at our mine site. In December of 2008, Zhenjiang Zongjing Non-Ferrous Metals acquired 50% of Perilia due to financial difficulties and merging our resources. In January 2011, we completed a purchase of Globestar, which is has operations in the Dominican Republic, which is a copper, gold, silver mine, and in Quebec, which is in Canada. We also have an interest in Mount Isa, Mount Oxide, which is currently under a study development. From 2008 to 2011, the South Broken Hill mine increased its productivity by about 100%. So in 3 years, we've increased our productivity by 100%, and we aim to do that, improve on that in the future. By the same token, the commodity prices at the moment are similar to 2008 in Australian dollar terms. We're basically looking at further development at the moment at the Potosi, which is on the northern side of town, and the North Mine, and any other further opportunities in the marketplace. So some of the issues that we face, so that gives you some sort of the history of where we've come from. Some of the issues we're facing, the mine or mining in Broken Hill has been operating since 1885, so there's been some significant technological changes during that time. We currently have some ageing infrastructure, mainly copper lines. We have installed a number of fibre links underground, which we still struggle with accessing through copper lines, through the Telstra exchange. So that's one of our issues. Competing for resources. I'm sure everyone has heard that the skilled workforce availability for mining is very slim and very difficult at the moment. So our ability to recruit and retain people to Broken Hill is difficult, along with other people. And we see the internet access, infrastructure, communications as one of the issues that could assist us in attracting and retaining people to Broken Hill. We've had increased technology in the mining industry over the last number of years, and our remote access to software applications is one of our issues, where people may have to dial into our applications to assist us with troubleshooting, etc. I'll give you one example. We've just installed a batch plant system at the mine at the cost of $5 million, and to maintain that system we need an external contractor to be able to dial in and assist us with troubleshooting. That's just one of the many projects that we got underway or have completed recently. We also have issues with business processing, including purchasing. I look after the purchasing department, and we have, people increase technology and being able to purchase online. We have file delivery issues where we may need to send photos or large files to other external parties, and we have difficulty doing that. And video conferencing, which has been mentioned here a few times already today. We have a video conferencing system in our office, which we've had for 6 months but can't use. We also have the flexibility, so people working from home, so their ability to access our system from home is difficult or non-existent. We also have part-time employees which may need to work from home, and we also have business travel, so people travelling to Sydney, Adelaide, Dominican Republic, etc., who cannot access files, emails, etc. I mean, our current mine data link is inadequate, with a single ADSL link providing only 300 kilobytes upload and 3 meg download. And as I said, we've now expanded overseas and around Australia, and we have difficulty with people moving around and not being able to access or be able to perform their duties purely because the link is non-existent or too slow. It could take up to 30 minutes for people to complete a simple task. Due to our distance from the mine to the Broken Hill Exchange, we're severely limited by the technology to fulfil our requirements, and currently no technology exists to service the mine's requirements in an economical fashion. One of my first tasks when I started at Perilia from the GM was to install a fibre link. We've been struggling to do that, and our initial investigations for the NBN versus Telstra, and we realised that NBN wasn't available and wasn't going to be for some time. That has forced us into a position now where we've commissioned Telstra to install that fibre link at a cost multiple times of what the NBN would be. Another issue we have is with our housing. Our housing is serviced by technology called fixed radio access, or FRA for short. This provides a fixed telephone service in the household but limits the data service to a 56 kilobyte dial-up modem service. We have a total of 67 Perilia residences serviced by this FRA, and there's undoubtedly more housing around Broken Hill that has this. The dial-up modem service is paid for separately on top of the FRA service. FRA is a dying technology with only a few Telstra personnel left in the entire country to maintain this infrastructure that it uses. Telstra is migrating from the FRA service and installing NextG into these houses, except NextG is still limited in what it can offer, and infrastructure-wise can still only handle a finite amount of data. Telstra will not install NextG services into housing that is currently unoccupied, so we have a number of houses around town that currently aren't occupied. This essentially means that when we do recruit the people to move into those houses, they will have to pay for that at their own cost. These houses are sometimes used by our employees that visit from China, and they can be up to our house at 6 months at a time. They don't have the facility to contact their other employees or families in China. We would envisage that all of these 67 houses would take up the NBN when it's available, and we would be developing these to be fulfilled in the next 2 to 3 years. It's imperative that these homes receive the NBN, as there soon will be no service for all or some of these houses when FRA is removed from support. We also have the lack of improved services will force us to use more of our resources from our head office, which is in Perth, and then this will limit our exposure to create or assist businesses and create business within the Broken Hill area. In summary, what we're looking for at Perilia is an economical, reliable and fast data link that is accessible to everyone in the town, including business and private customers and consumers. The benefit, would not only for our business, but is also for our employees working with the local community and all businesses involved in being able to use the technology to improve their cost effectiveness and productivity. And we're also looking for an easy to install, reliable and economical voice service delivered over the NBN to all houses in town. Thank you.
Look, thanks for that, Lance, and to everyone. Really appreciate the evidence given. We've got a bit of time for questions. My first one's really just about the level of consultation and communication between the department and then NBN Co itself, particularly in light of the final two, both the scepticism and then some very real practical problems that have been identified. but basically just a run of the three of you as far as RDA, a major council in the area and a major business in the area. Have you, A, had contact with the department and or NBN Co on the issues you've raised? And then B, what are the expectations you've been left with as a consequence if the answer's yes?
There you go. Linda speaking. We have had contact with the NBN for general consultation in the region for over a year. So we had two public consultations in Broken Hill in May and in June last year. And we followed those up with, no, I should explain that the people who were invited to those two consultations, the first load of people were education people, for sure. Certainly we did not focus on the general public. What we were doing there was looking at the expansion of education opportunities through the use of video conferencing, and we had those consultations at the TAFE College. The second one that we had in June was focused on the general business community in our region, and we had the NBN Co come out, we had the stakeholder manager, we had NextGen, we had the digital switchover fellow piggybacked onto their presentation, and that was quite well attended. Not everyone can get to all of the presentations, so we have a real issue in our region about people being able to get to consultations and then subsequently being able to access the follow-up data from companies or from the government websites. We then followed up generally in our community with we had a technology evening with Pete Blasina, if you know of that character, who basically the object of that particular presentation was to capture the imagination of local people, particularly business people, to see where technology is going. And we had, according to the state government rep who was there with us that night, it was the best attended business event in town, but it still only attracted 60 people out of a population of 20,000 people. And which was interesting, considering that was the first one we actually asked for a fee to come in the door to help cover costs. We have today, for example, we did ask, in fact last week I contacted the NBN Co again. I have made several attempts to contact the NBN to get them to be supportive of our region, and they're very slow to respond to the emails, that's for sure. They
the irony.
Yeah.
They're on dial-up.
And even last week I did contact one of our NBN stakeholder managers in the state of New South Wales. Actually, I asked someone in Victoria first because I thought they might be a bit more proactive, but he couldn't come out to this patch, which is interesting because our fibre link goes across the top of Victoria. I thought it would have been normal, to follow through. But anyway, went to the New South Wales patch as soon as it crossed the river. And basically he said, yeah, I'd love to come out. Yeah, if you don't hear from me by lunchtime, ring me back. I was so busy writing my submission, I couldn't ring him back and do his diary management. So I did not hear from him again, and I was expecting him to attend maybe on the lunchtime flight. But we do have difficulty in getting the attention of the NBN because we're just so far away.
Mm-hmm. And have you been left with an expectation of, dates or deadlines?
We were given we were certainly given a deadline in the forums last year that we were ready. We're going to be switched on by September.
September what?
2011, this year.
Okay.
Now, Broken Hill
right.
has got the fibre. So the cable between Mildura and Broken Hill should be switch on ready, or whatever the terminology is, by September this year. That's why we're kind of expecting that any day now we should be ready to get this rollout, and we're waiting for some kind of communication from NBN that this will happen soon. We also, behind the scenes, have been advised that we need to assist, and we acknowledge that. We need to assist the process, so we acknowledge that we will do what we can. So we are currently really actively looking at our our digital economy strategy for the region. We're looking at some really detailed investment, internet investment, if you like, for how businesses can capitalise on the technology. The education and health sectors, you'll hear plenty from them in the coming presentations, but I do think that there are more things we could be doing. Time and money and resource permitting, of course, we'll do what we can, but we're ready. But the biggest issue is we don't know when. If we knew when it was here, we would know, but why would you do something now and everyone forgets it and you get the rollout 9 years down the track? Yeah. That's the problem.
Can I just get the other, Mayor Brown?
Yeah.
What's your engagement been like, and so what's the expectation you've been left with through that engagement?
Very little, Chair.
Both?
On both, yes. As far as the NBN's concerned, we've obviously been invited to, and we had some management representatives on the RDA until recently. We are a small shire, although large in size. We're a satellite shire. If you want to buy a motor car, if we have an economic boom in our shire and you want to buy a motor car, you can't buy one in our shire. If you want to buy a TV, you can't buy one in the shire. If you want to buy a set of furniture, you can't. We don't have the size in any of our townships to maintain that type of entity. So our southern parts will travel off to places like Hay and Balranald. Our Menindia will travel here, or Mildura. From Wilcannia we'll travel to Broken Hill, or maybe Cobar, but normally Broken Hill. In the same way as Broken Hill goes to Adelaide or Melbourne and so on down the track. The upshot of that is that we're on the end of things. We depend on others in many cases to speak for us, which has been our own, a little remiss on our behalf, but at the same time we're tied up with our own local issues. We're a small shire, as I say. Our resources are poor, both time, travel, distance and financial. Where we'll be in 5 years' time is in the lap of the gods. We'll be going through our reviews and obviously the state government's review of where local government's going. So from a local government perspective, our issue is about being able to have access to government entities. If there are changes in the method of service provision, then we need to have that access for the access to the key players, the players in the big cities. As far as our own engagement is concerned, none. And we don't expect to be linked in the early stages. We're not even sure yet whether we'll be wire, wireless or satellite. And when we hear the concerns about all of those, we are worried. And we, for instance, at the moment have a fibre cable that runs past us that runs the main trunk.
Yeah. Can I just ask Paul about that? Paul, you're talking about Wilcannia now, eh?
Yes, that's correct.
So who owns that fibre? That's Telstra. And where does it go? From where to where?
Runs from east to west.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's one of the main main lines. So
you've only got ADSL 1 available?
ADSL 2 in some areas. Yes, depending on the
And what sort of speeds can you get from that?
When I look at it, it tells me 256,000, but depending on how much you want to pay to keep that level up, and it's through the phone line, so it's pretty poor.
Yeah, well, that's how ADSL is delivered, through the telephone line. But I'm just surprised you don't get a better speed. How far are you from the exchange?
Half a K.
And is the exchange connected to the fibre?
I believe so. I'm not sure.
When you ask Telstra about that, do they give you an explanation as to why it's so poor?
With respect, we're desperately trying to get mobile service to work in the area, and that's been our key up until this point. And we're progressing down the track. We've put in optic cable between a couple of our facilities within the township, specifically to allow our mainframe to operate within our own facilities. One of the government departments has just spent a lot of money to have a cable run across the street to open up an office and get a connection to their own network. We've been told that some areas they'll look at the property and say, oh yes, we can't get ADSL there at all because the cabling's not adequate.
The next gen regional black spots cable, which has sort of duplicated the fibre capacity for Broken Hill, hasn't been run past Wilcannia though.
No.
I suppose that's because it's a small community compared to Broken Hill.
My understanding is it runs through from Mildura, so it comes up the
Yeah,
from the south.
yeah, I know. I know we saw their route today, and I just checked it here.
We're actually northeast of Broken Hill.
Yeah, yeah.
So, you know, we're getting a bit of work done on a Queensland community, Julia Creek. NBN has agreed to take on some work, and they will develop a process. If there is a cable that runs nearby, where a process of engagement and the cost and who pays, and so that'll hopefully be a bit of an example for all as far as the process of how you engage when there's, you know, some cables that run underneath or very close to a smaller community.
Chairman, as a small community, we understand that even the take-up within the township will be very poor in the initial instances because the people don't have phone lines now, they don't have the money, and that's where it's going to rest. It's going to be dependent on possibly trying to develop local wireless network off a node that enables people to connect into that on some cheap.
Yeah. Can I just hear? Thanks for that. Can I just hear from Lance? Like yours is some very real for a decent sized business. To be left with some of the stories that you were telling us, that does sniff of some really poor engagement at a number of different levels. Tell us your story in regards to that consultation and communication from a communication agency.
Yeah, I'd have to say I haven't personally been involved in the communication, but my IT representative has been in consultation with them, and it's been next to zero feedback. As I said, we're trying to implement the fibre link into the business and trying to get timelines or any indication of whether, if it would be available and when, was non-existent.
And how long has that been going on for?
6 months.
Right. So
well, 6 months since I've been here. I'm not sure about prior to that.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions? Deputy Chair.
Probably just following on from that. Firstly, a specific question to yourself, Linda. You were told last year the deadline was September of this year to roll out fibre to Broken Hill, or
I think the understanding back then was that we thought it was the rollout in the town, and I think we cleared that up within months afterwards that that's not the case. Their terminology was not very clear at that workshop, and the switching on of the cable versus the rolling out of the fibre to the premises was the confusion. So there was a little confusion in town about that.
So have they clarified that now? Because I'm just interested, did they make that statement last year and you've heard nothing since, or has there been some clarification, and if so, what is that clarification?
I can't remember at what point I got the clarification, but I would have got that clarification within months after that, so it would have been before the end of last year.
So what have they clarified?
But it was purely my either a phone call, and simply the clarification is that that it was the backhaul cable. It wasn't the delivery, the trench digging through the town.
Okay.
But certainly in the context of the conversations that we had about the trenches that had to be dug, the training that had to be done, the number of people we had to train up, we were all very excited that we had to get all this training done. And now we're getting to the pointy end of that timing. We really need to know, do we need those trained people now, or do we need it in 9 years' time? Because 9 years' time is the problem for us.
My next question probably goes to all of you. I understand, particularly Paul, your comments about cynicism, and I don't think that's going to be overcome till people see it and see it operating. I mean, certainly the figures we have, and I'm just looking at your submission and your download and upload figures, and thank you for providing those. Even at the interim satellite service, if nothing else, there'd be considerable improvements if that's delivered at the speed that's proposed by NBN Co. But I understand that cynicism probably won't go away until people see that. So in the meantime, I mean, what can be done to improve, if there's something this committee can do in improving the communication and understanding? You've talked about people not having knowledge of what the use, or the capabilities of faster broadband, but also the benefits that can come from that. So not just how they could actually use it in their own home or business, but also what are the broader benefits for a community. What can be done to address that? Obviously, the best model is having someone who regularly visits, but let's assume NBN isn't going to necessarily send someone to your town on a very regular basis. What other methods to get proper communication happening in your town so you know what's going on? Anybody?
I could chip in here. I think we would, a preferred method would be to contract somebody to do it for them. If they haven't got the people who can do it, then we know people who know enough about it. We've recently received a quotation from somebody to come and do it, to do a workshop for business people in town, and I think that would be quite an affordable way of doing it, just to be able to contract that expertise and to have them on the road. And the other thing that needs to be understood is when you go on the road and consult in this region, not everyone is available on the day. So I dare say that Parillia wasn't available on the day that we had the NBN in town, and that's the nature of the beast. Once off is not enough. We're a small community, people are working, they're sick, they're on leave, all sorts of things happen. So it's something that we probably need to have several of, not just one of, to capture people, but that's one suggestion.
Beyond the face-to-face consultations, though, like you said, there'll be some people who can just never make it to those forums because of their own business commitments or personal commitments. What's another method as well that could be utilised to get that communication out?
Through the Chair, I haven't seen a simplified presentation of what the NBN's all about. I haven't seen something which is acceptable or understood by people who aren't technically capable. We do have property owners who, we've got councillors who don't have computers that they use on a regular basis themselves because of their own links. We have councillors who only use them for stock prices, etc. The concepts of what can come and how programs can be developed, and I did hear the Chair on the radio this morning, and he referred to a particular use of the medium to link two groups of people on opposite sides of the world at a social function, and the attitude that came across. Now, many of the people would not see that as something that was pertinent, but not understand that could translate into a meeting such as this, which becomes as interactive as it really does, and it's not a Skype or a Windows transfer of information between people. This is the sort of thing that we need to encourage people to understand. And we do have a lot of people in the area who are not technically savvy and don't understand where it can go, and so the next step where we're talking, this is why I talk about being another 10 years behind. One of the things that was put forward at a particular presentation was that the opportunity for young people to develop a use and a skill where they could further develop applications which may, through the transfer of information rapidly, be able to become part of the big world. Well, we're going to be another 10 years further behind because that will all be taking place elsewhere and their connectivity to that will not be there. So we need really not just the NBN, but the information that being 10 years behind already and only getting mobile phones in the area 8 years ago, and we're still wondering where our satellite television is going to come from. The issue is, how do we introduce people into this technology and convince them that it is going to be a genuine and valuable addition, whether it's selling cattle out of your own paddock, that the connectivity will be such that you'll be able to run your auction in your own paddock at a very high level, whereas they can't now. These are things where the savings will come in some areas, or running your own business. And so I see really an educational role to be carried out, and I really believe that's where a lot of this doubt of the whole NBN concept comes from. People don't understand.
This is the big problem facing very fast broadband everywhere is the lack of applications to take advantage of it, and even where there are applications available, lack of awareness of what they are and their potential. But can I just ask one question, Chair, with just very briefly of Mr. Duggan? Your operations are located very close, basically in and around Broken Hill here, aren't they?
Yes.
So
we have one operation on the south, Broken Hill,
yeah,
and one on the north.
Yeah, I understand. And they so with the fibre rollout in Broken Hill, you'll be connected to that.
That's right.
You'd expect to be getting fibre to the premises, yeah. Okay.
System, yeah.
Okay.
But not necessarily those premises without copper.
Sorry?
That's the technical
the
issue.
Housing.
The housing.
Yeah, the housing is a different issue.
That's an issue we'll follow up.
Yeah,
That's
okay.
not
Either through Telstra or NBN Co. That sounds unusual to me. I don't know about the rest of the committee, but that sounds like someone's not listening to you.
The other suggestion too about contacting people in the region, we have a project at the moment called the Regional Leadership Advisory Network, which is engaging technology to contact people in the region for exactly the purpose that you've raised. It's a SharePoint operated service with a data centre that's, we contract our space in Brisbane, and it's slower than the actual internet delivery. So going through that particular site, I would have loved to have used that as a solution, but not appropriate.
I was just going to make a very quick statement. I just wanted to pass on, if you can pass on our thanks to the businesses and individuals who actually put those submissions together, because I've had a very quick look and I know that it's a lot to ask of small business owners and individuals to put together a submission about why this is important to them, and I just want to acknowledge our appreciation for them doing that, and if you can pass on our thanks. So, go on.
Final question from local members.
We're running behind, Chair, and I won't take up much time, but I just wonder if we as a committee could approach NBN Co and ask for a detailed breakdown of timelines and explanation of what might come to Broken Hill when, because I'm a little underwhelmed with the information they've provided us, saying that they see it as allowing people to have, being able to keep in touch with friends and family. That's the benefit that the NBN Co primarily will bring to Broken Hill, and without underestimating the benefit of keeping in touch with friends and family. We've heard some more heavy-hitting evidence today. I'm also a bit concerned because they've almost backed away from a definite undertaking that optical fibre will be delivered to Broken Hill by saying that these are indicative maps only and Broken Hill may be served by fibre to the premises technology. And then when you look at the map, it backs away from that again. So I would wonder if we as a committee could ask for that. I mean, we can't demand a commitment, I know that, but I just think it's a little bit less than satisfactory that we don't have timelines and we don't have a commitment.
Okay, point taken. I think the committee's got a range of issues that we'll be taking up with both the department and NBN Co based on evidence so far, and we're only halfway through the day. So thank you very much for your evidence and taking the time out of all of your busy lives to be here. I don't think anyone had to... There were no questions on notice, were there? No. So... but if we have further questions, if you could turn them around as quick as possible, we'd really appreciate it. And thank you very much for your time today. It is appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I've got to ask and I hope I'm saying it correctly, I'm sure I'll be corrected, is it the Murray Ma?
They're confused.
Murray Ma Health Aboriginal Corporation. And I used to play football with someone who's working with you now. Did he tell you that?
No, who was that?
Saw him last night.
Oh, yes.
He did. So I now welcome representatives of Murray Ma Health Aboriginal Corporation. For the Hansard record, could you please state your name and the capacity in which you appear before the committee?
My name's Kathy Dyer. I'm the Director of Corporate Services for Murray Ma Health Aboriginal Corporation.
And my name is Michael Hanley. I'm the Manager of Information Technology for Murray Health Aboriginal Corporation.
And just for clarity, is it one word or 2 words?
2 words.
Oh, I can see have a look on your name. It's all joined. So it is 2 words. And what does it mean?
Coming together, working together.
Okay. Okay, so although the committee does not require you to give evidence under oath, I advise you that these hearings are formal proceedings of the Parliament and warrant the same respect as proceedings of the respective houses. The giving of false or misleading evidence is a serious matter and may be regarded as a contempt of Parliament. The evidence given today will be recorded by Hansard and attracts parliamentary privilege. Do you have a submission you'd like to provide for the committee?
I can provide notes. I've not done a formal submission, I'm sorry. I can provide my notes though.
Are they going to be your opening statement? Because you don't have to double up.
No, that's fine. All right then.
Yep. So if you'd like to make an opening statement shaped around those notes, then that'll do the job.
I'd like to start by thanking the committee for the invitation to Marama to appear today, and also like to acknowledge the traditional owners where we're meeting today, which is Barkindji country. For those that aren't familiar with Marama, I'll give you a very brief overview as to what our organisation does. First and foremost, we're an Aboriginal community-controlled regional health service that is an all-Aboriginal board of directors, and we provide health services across a region of almost 200,000 square kilometres in far western New South Wales. The second standout feature of what we do is we manage mainstream services, that is, those services funded by New South Wales Health under a special agreement called the Lower Western Sector Agreement. So Marama, as an Indigenous organisation, is responsible for the management of the health services in Tibooburra, Wilcannia, Menindee, Ivanhoe, Derton, Wentworth and Balranald. Marama also provides a number of social and community programs, largely focused on Wilcannia, but also linking with programs in Derton in the south. Marama is also involved in research and evaluation projects, largely focusing on issues that are of great impact to Aboriginal people in our region. And we're also leading an interagency work around child development and wellbeing. If I start by talking about Aboriginal health in the far west of New South Wales, I am not a techno geek. You won't hear me talk about bits or bytes or packets. I love the packet talk, that was great. But so we're a health organisation. I've brought my data geek with me if you've got geeky questions. Aboriginal health in the far west of New South Wales. As an overview, in the last decade, hospitalisations, Aboriginal people hospitalised because of diabetes, that is, with poorly managed diabetes. Aboriginal people end up in hospital at 4 and 2.5 times the rate of people elsewhere in New South Wales, with the peak of those numbers happening when people are in their 40s compared to non-Aboriginal people who end up in hospital because of diabetes in their 70s. Same information with regard to cardiovascular disease. Aboriginal men and women end up in hospital at about 3 times the New South Wales rate, and again the peak is in their 40s compared to non-Aboriginal men and women who end up in hospital with cardiovascular disease in their 70s. So really that's painting a picture of immediate disparity between Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal people, and that's really where the Closing the Gap program has come from. Interestingly, Marama has been attempting to close the gap now for about 15 years. If I talk a little bit about some of the issues that, some of the dot points that people in their submissions were asked to address. With regard to the delivery of government services and programs, about 90% of Marama's programs and services are funded by the Commonwealth. That's the Department of Health and Ageing and FAXIA at the present moment in time. The majority of those funding programs target Aboriginal health and wellbeing. As examples of those, there's Closing the Gap, Healthy for Life, Bringing Them Home, which is about the stolen generation, and community support services, as well as other more mainstream programs such as the RPHS, which is the Rural Primary Health Service, and PHI, which is the Preventative Health Initiative. If we look at the service, the provision of services through that government funding, we're providing services to somewhat less than 3,000 Aboriginal people across, as I said, 200,000 square kilometres. You do the maths, very sparsely populated. So straight away we have an issue of the difficulty of service delivery in remote anywhere, but for us, remote New South Wales. And you very much have a chicken and egg situation where the programs have been put in place to address poor Aboriginal health in remote Australia and therefore requiring of resources. And yet remote Australia is often the poor cousin to metropolitan Australia regarding the infrastructure that's necessary to close that gap. As examples, those two of the programs I've mentioned, two of the funding programs I've mentioned, the Community Support Service, which is all about providing information, referrals and internet access for Aboriginal people regarding mainstream services, to try and assist Aboriginal people to better access mainstream services so that they overcome some of that disadvantage. Also the Remote Service Delivery Program, which Paul Brown from Central Darling Shire mentioned, which is all about improving access to government services, both state and Commonwealth, for Aboriginal people living in remote Australia. Again, Wilcannia is the prime example for us in this region. And it's important to see that the level of disadvantage in that community is attempted to be dealt with through the RSD program. Another one of the dot points for the submissions was about achieving health outcomes in the region. I'd like to flag to all of you, hopefully, the knowledge about an existing National Aboriginal Health Strategy which was signed off by COAG back in 1989. That talked about improving the health of Aboriginal people, about sharing resources, knowledge, skills, infrastructure, experience, culture as a means of enhancing services to Aboriginal people, providing an Aboriginal perspective to service management, planning, development and delivery, and to build the commitment to participation by Aboriginal people in health service management, planning, development and delivery. These are the guiding principles under that National Aboriginal Health Strategy, which, as I said, was from 1989 and signed off by COAG. Interestingly, we've adopted those principles in the Lower Western Sector Agreement that I mentioned to you earlier, which is the document by which Marama, an Aboriginal organisation, manages mainstream services in our region. The thinking behind that being that hopefully we can influence the delivery of services and the way those services are delivered, and provide services that better meet the needs of Aboriginal people, and hopefully they'll take up the services being offered and hopefully try and close that gap in Aboriginal disadvantage. So Marama's approach to dealing with exactly those issues is the development of a whole-of-life course chronic disease strategy, which we've now had in place since 2005. Improving the delivery of primary health care, that is keeping people well, with a focus on prevention of chronic disease, its early detection and improved management of chronic disease when it arrives, if it arrives. The delivery of services remotely, we currently are funded to provide chronic disease doctors, that is GPs that are focusing purely on chronic disease, who are able to access up-to-date medical records in databases that actually sit hundreds of kilometres away. We're improving access for Aboriginal people to health services and removing the barriers to care so that hopefully we can keep people well so that we do end up closing that gap. We do a significant amount of employment of Aboriginal clinicians, that is not just getting Aboriginal people to bring their fellow community members to the health service to be dealt with by non-Aboriginal clinicians, but we're actually engaging Aboriginal people in the delivery of healthcare services and training them up to do that. And we've also implemented a number of innovative service delivery methods like an Outback Vascular Health Service, which is where we've linked to RPA Hospital in Sydney, whereby they commit to providing us with medical specialists in nephrology, that's kidney disease, cardiology and endocrinology around diabetes. And they come out on a quarterly basis, but they also link with us via video conferencing on a monthly basis. So that's Marama's approach to trying to address those National Aboriginal Health Strategy principles. Another one of the dot points for the committee's submissions was around educational resources and training. Marama has recently concluded an Aboriginal health worker trainee cohort of 10 young Aboriginal people who were employed in Broken Hill, Wilcannia, Menindee and Ivanhoe, and one in Dareton. They've all achieved a Certificate 4 in Aboriginal Health through TAFE, which was fantastic. We were able to negotiate block study for those students here in Broken Hill. The program hadn't previously been available to us here. They were able to provide video conferencing support weekly with their teachers in Dubbo. So we've now got, across our region, 10 new clinicians. They've also, a number of them just recently finished a Certificate 3 in blood taking and pathology, which adds to their role as clinicians. In terms of further addressing the issue of educational resources and training, we do a lot of online learning and distance education in our region, meaning people, particularly Aboriginal people, don't have to leave country or their community to actually access that training. Incredibly important to us to be able to improve the number of Aboriginal people that are becoming clinicians for our region. As I've mentioned, the Outback Vascular Health Service is now in place, with medical specialists being able to case conference with our existing GPs, health workers and nurses in the ongoing care of clients via video conferencing monthly. That's not only improving the knowledge of all of our local clinicians about those particular specialties, it's also a way of breaking down professional isolation for those people so that they're actually linking directly with the specialists. In fact, I have to say we've had comments from some of our GPs saying that this is actually better connection with medical specialists than they've had anywhere else where they've ever worked. Another one of the points of reference for the committee was around regional economic growth. And I have to say the availability of essential services is part of our ability to recruit a strong group of professionals to the region, which, as you would be aware anywhere, and has been mentioned previously today, is an incredibly difficult thing for remote Australia, the recruitment of professional people. So for us to be able to say that in our community we can provide those things which you would otherwise assume or expect of a metropolitan area is certainly the case. As an example, to address our poor Aboriginal health, we have this ongoing need for health professionals. We advertised 4 times nationally over a period of about 3 years for child and family nurses for our region. Unsuccessfully each time, often not getting any applications, sometimes only getting 1. Most recently, we've been able to recruit 2 child and family nurses from New Zealand, and our last doctor was recruited from Wales. So again, this is all about improving the delivery of services, but also being able for us to grow as a business and for those professionals to come to our community and feel well supported. In terms of business efficiencies, there's significant reliance, you may well have heard it in other hearings that you've done, in the medical profession around technology, but particularly remotely with regard to the delivery of pathology and radiology results, electronic referrals, the sharing of medical records for the most up-to-date treatment and test results and information on an individual client, and also links between the mainstream health system, GPs and AMSs, that is Aboriginal Medical Services, to improve primary health care, for example, discharge summaries and secure messaging of confidential information. This is all taken as a given in metropolitan areas. For us it's not, and it needs to be, because what we're trying to do is keep people out of hospital, not understand what's happened to them once they've been in hospital. So for us, improved primary health care is an absolute essential. Another one of the dot points for the committee's consideration was around research and development, and I can tell you that Marama's involved in a number of both local and national and international research projects. One is about ABCD, it's called the Audit and Best Practice for Chronic Disease Project. It started in the Northern Territory, which is looking at the successes in Aboriginal chronic disease management and what works best. Another one is the Kanyini Project, which has a number of factors to it. One is an international project looking at the poly pill, which is actually combining a number of the key constituents in a number of the medications used to address chronic disease, and putting it into a single tablet to improve medical management of people with chronic disease. Also, part of that project is the ability to prioritise clients with high cardiovascular risk. And the last research project I'll tell you about is the Community Safety Research Project, which is looking at individual, family and community violence in the communities of Broken Hill, Wilcannia and Menindee. We're about to undertake a significant community survey with the use of tablet computers uploaded into a database that's being developed for us in the Northern Territory for analysis of information. At the moment, we've undertaken as the qualitative part of that research about 150 surveys about people's experience of violence, and the quantitative part of the research is about to begin with this community survey, where we hope to interview about 800 people and then subsequently evaluate a healing program that will go with that. These are all incredibly important issues to the Aboriginal community, not only here but across Australia, and our ability to link with those projects and do so in a timely way, I think, is really important. Really, my Marama's submission to you today is really about disadvantage and overcoming disadvantage and the need for things for access to services like the NBN and hopefully the benefits it hopes to bring to our communities, not just the Aboriginal community but the communities of remote and far western New South Wales, is absolutely essential for us to be able to overcome the current and existing disadvantage that the Aboriginal people suffer from. I think the agenda, the current government's agenda around social inclusion is incredibly important as well, and I just think it needs to be taken to the ultimate extent where it's not just for people who live in convenient locations, but social inclusion really should be for everyone. And the Parliament must be either absolutely committed to overcoming Aboriginal disadvantage, such as the fast-tracked rollout of NBN services to remote New South Wales, or it will end up making decisions that will continue to exacerbate the future of Australia's first people.
Well done. Michael, do you have anything you wanted to say in an opening statement?
You say technical things.
I think for us, the issues we have at the moment are more in the outlying areas. We run a health service from Menindee and Wilcannia, and I guess for the past 3 years that we've had doctors using medical software from those locations. We've had nothing but issues. We use a variety of technologies to gain connectivity back to different services, RFDS medical director services and so forth. In the past, that's all been handled via NextG, which the technology itself should be stable but doesn't tend to be. I think it's more so an issue with the load on the NextG services in those areas as opposed to the technology itself. We've only recently got ADSL into the Wilcannia Health Service. It seems to have stabilised the situation there, but we're still only getting speeds of 8 meg, and these guys are connecting back to medical databases and trying to run clinics from these areas. So.
Okay. And I notice you've been sitting here through the whole day today.
Yep.
A couple of technical issues have come up. You got a view on those at all? Like, do you share them from a health perspective, in an Indigenous health perspective, or, you know?
I think we survive currently through not ideal technology. Our regional office here, I currently use 2 ADSL2 connections to get the speeds that I need. I aggregate the data between the two, which, being in town and several hundred metres from the exchange, we get decent ADSL2 speeds. It's really our rural areas and our upload speed as well. For me to pull in and to offer proper services to the outlying areas, we need that higher upload speed, not so much the download bandwidth that we get. And the other end as well, they need to have decent speeds at places like Wilcannia and Menindee.
To the point where you don't use it? To the point where you still do old school business, you know, where people drive it in, or... or do you still try and struggle through? We
use less than best practice to achieve the same ends.
And what would that, in a practical sense, what do you mean by that?
Slower access via terminal services to applications. They basically would use the bare minimum on site instead of a lot of the productivity tools that they would use at the regional office here. Yeah. So basically just so they can get access to the patient file, download pathology results, and be able to access that sort of information. But the outlying areas don't even use any sort of appointment software. It's all still paper. Yep. There's a lot of things that could be improved if the technology was there to do it.
The thing is, you don't know what you don't know. Like, you don't know what you could do because you've never actually experienced it.
Yeah. So have you got any technology providers? Well, first of all, I'll ask you about the same question that I asked the others in regards to what level of consultation have you had and what expectation have you been left with? And then I'll ask the next question at the same time, which is, what about technology providers in the health sector who hang off that wholesale platform? Are they knocking on your door yet? You know, the GEs with their handheld ultrasounds, or are they floating around the market here yet? Or you're just not having any engagement whatsoever.
With regard to engagement by the NBN code, someone did come by and talk to us once.
I've only been at this capacity at Moramar
Some
for
guy in a
the
suit.
past 4 months.
That was a nice lady. She was lovely. But my response to her was when I can be convinced that Broken Hill as a community is well served by telecommunications, then I'll believe what is potentially able to happen outside Broken Hill. So as you know, I said, we're not even starting to talk about the telecommunication issues we've got in Wilcannia, where I can't even within Broken Hill, I can't communicate with the other people within Marama by mobile phone in all locations around town.
Yeah.
And it's 10 million times
Right.
worse in Wilcannia. So to be able to provide
So one
services,
conversation, no expectations, just,
Yep.
high,
Yep.
basically.
Yep.
Yeah,
So-
I
so-
believe the other health services suffer similar issues with their communications as well, even formerly Guars, I believe they have a lot of issues with speed and communication between sites as well.
We are unfortunately really skinny on time. You've been given half an hour. I'd love to have more time, but so we'll try and get in as many questions as we can in, I think, 3 minutes.
Yep.
Deputy Chair.
Maybe to summarise your opening statement, you understand the benefits of it. The question is how quickly can you get it to start delivering those benefits. When you do get the fast broadband access that you're seeking, have you got the resources then to capitalise on its capabilities? Because I know the capabilities in health and they are very exciting, but what does that mean for an organisation like yours?
We've invested a fair bit in IT infrastructure over the last 12 to 18 months, I guess, and the foundation is there to take advantage of it, definitely.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Right, Susan, you...
No, I'll hold on for the interest of time.
Ursula? Perfect, we're on time.
Thank you.
Look, thank you very much, and if we need to get in touch, if you can turn it around pretty quickly, that'd be great. That'd be really valuable. I appreciate you coming in today.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So certainly welcome again, Broken Hill City Council, and thanks for the tour of the film studio. That was fantastic. For the Hansard record, could you please state your name and the capacity in which you appear before the committee?
Yes, thank you. Frank Zaknich, General Manager, Broken Hill City Council.
Okay, although the committee does not require you to give evidence under oath, I advise you that these hearings are formal proceedings of the Parliament and warrant the same respect of proceedings of the respective houses. The giving of false or misleading evidence is a serious matter and may be regarded as a contempt of Parliament. The evidence given today will be recorded by Hansard and attracts parliamentary privilege. Would you like to make an opening statement?
Yes, thank you, Mr Chair, and I'd extend a formal welcome to the committee and their visit to Broken Hill. I know the Mayor welcomed you this morning. It's good to have you here. And the key focus for our submission, and Council's made a submission to you last week, is that the Council views the rollout of the National Broadband Network as a key enabling infrastructure for the City of Broken Hill and region, and a critical part of retaining and attracting residents, business and industry to the far west of New South Wales. And that's the key driver for us. The City, of course, is the largest regional centre in this part of New South Wales, and a key hub for many services to our surrounding region, not just in New South Wales but into South Australia and southwestern Queensland. We share a similar role with our city of Mildura in Victoria, and it's interesting to note, and I'll touch on this later, that the recent rollout of the digital TV switchover programs were enabled in Mildura and Broken Hill, and that's a key point in terms of our submission in terms of support. Adelaide, of course, is probably culturally our big city, and as a community we've shopped, holidayed, partied, played football in Adelaide over many years, so that's our key sort of regional or main city, as opposed to Sydney.
How long does it take you to drive to Adelaide?
About 5.5 hours, and it's about an hour on the plane.
And where do you party in Adelaide?
I'll tell you later. Tourism, of course, in addition to our long-held mining industry, the last 128 years, of course, the largest silver, lead and zinc deposit in the world that's still being mined to this day. And that's gone through cycles as mining does, and we've ridden those peaks and troughs, and probably a more resilient community as a result these days, certainly more diverse. And tourism is one of those strong performers with increases in tourism numbers to the region over the last 12 months of about 11%. The other important factor to note is the current nomination of Broken Hill as a city for National Heritage listing. And if that's successful, we'll see the hill that changed a nation rightly recognised for its place and role in the nation's development. And recent council infrastructure improvements, together with filmmaking, which we discussed this morning, retail and renewable energy developments in and around the city, will also mean that Broken Hill will continue to be a vibrant, culturally rich city and a livable regional city. And a lot of what the NBN can do for us as a community is about livability as a regional city for the longer term. I'll touch on some key points that some of the questions you've asked earlier will respond to from Council's point of view. So what's Council doing in response to this great opportunity with respect to the NBN? So Council's been a strong advocate for the rollout of the backhaul black spots infrastructure, and that's an enabling NBN rollout, and the backhaul is currently under construction, as you would know, in and around Broken Hill and region, and we're expecting the backhaul into the exchange here to be finished by September. That's been the advice to us, September this year. Council's established a partnership with the Regional Development Australia Far West, set up a digital economy working group to develop and progress that digital economy strategy for Broken Hill and region. And the key components of that strategy will obviously align themselves with the national strategy. How do we make better online participation by households, online engagement by business, not-for-profits, smarter management of our local environment and infrastructure, improved health and aged care that you've heard about already today, expanding online education, teleworking, and improved online government service delivery and engagement. So what is the Council requesting the inquiry to consider? Firstly, and we've touched on this already today, the Australian Government and NBN Co are providing some funding for partnering with regional and rural remote local governments and RDA to assist them to understand, develop and progress these enabling digital economy strategies for their particular region. And obviously the most recent example where this has worked really well with the digital TV switchover program was that the Council and the federal government were involved in a liaison officer program where funding was provided, where for a 6-month period in the lead up to the switchover there was a local person engaged by Council in partnership with the department to assist to run the program, to raise awareness, to assist people to understand what the benefits of the NBN are, how they can get involved, what the opportunities and advantages were for their particular business, what does it all mean, which is essentially a mystery still out there at the moment, not just for those people who don't know anything about it, but also for those who've had some involvement with it. Secondly, we're asking the inquiry, the committee, to make representations to NBN Co to consider key strategic locations, including Broken Hill, for priority rollout of the NBN. Not just the backhaul, which we've been successful in, but the connection to property. And also the key reasons that we've identified in the submission for Broken Hill being a priority location for the NBN are as detailed in the submission, and talk about additional telecommunications capacity, assistance with developments in the region, which we provided details of, and you heard about today, mining, film, renewable energies in the future, the economic stimulus that would bring in investment, and obviously improving a whole range of communication opportunities. So that's the summary, Mr Chair, and I'm happy to answer any questions and add further information about Council's experience in terms of data speeds and the like within our own business.
Okay, thank you for that. Just to follow on from the previous two presenters, the question of consultation and communication. How's the Council's communication been with the department, with NBN Co, and what sort of expectations have you been left with?
Yes, thank you. The department's in recent times has been reasonable. There's actually a coordinator role allocated to this region. So Judith's been in touch regularly, and we've got another meeting later this week in terms of looking at planning what council needs to do to assist NBN to roll this out. Again, we've got no timelines per se. The NBN Co, similar to the RDA experience, we're involved in some of those workshop sessions with their planning people who came out to the region to talk to us. So that's probably a 1 or 2 type workshop session in the last probably 3 years. Next Gen, who are the contractors, as I understand, rolling out the backhaul. We've had obviously a relationship with them in terms of them seeking approvals or providing notification that can be working in the area, assisting to site infrastructure in road reserves or the normal sort of thing you do with a telco. Expectation, well, we expect that the backhaul will be hooked up by September this year. Beyond that, we've got no indication or expectation that's been supported by any information that they've provided. And it obviously, from my point of view, our council's point of view, it seems like it's going to be a very competitive process in terms of who's going to be able to build the best business case for this to be rolled out in your particular location. And I suppose that's a concern in terms of rural and regional communities being behind the 8 ball to start with, in terms of trying to build a business case, because it's not just about business, it's about enabling all this other stuff to happen. Linking into livability of regional cities and regional centres.
Have you got a submission in with NBN Co?
No, not yet.
Okay.
No.
Has anyone on behalf of the region done anything in a formal sense?
We've established the working party to look at the digital strategy, but at this stage that's the extent of it.
Okay. And just as a bit of a rough read, on a scale of 1 to 100, how NBN ready do you think Broken Hill is?
Well, a lot of that's going to depend. Okay, so NBN ready in terms of planning, awareness, those sorts of things?
Yeah, the works. And, the business community, how geared are they?
Oh,
all of us, I think, are struggling with, has the penny dropped for all of us?
Yeah. I think...
just where do you read Broken Hill compared to...
Well, we're obviously...
As nicely as possible.
Yeah. I think we're, we've obviously got an advantage with respect to the backhaul link, securing that link from, Shepparton and Mildura up to here. That was an important start. Obviously, without that, it was never going to happen. So there's an awareness, I think, around some of the providers, obviously, some awareness at council, but the community are probably in the dark. So in terms of a percentage out of 100, it's, or a number out of 100, it's probably around, 25, so fairly low. Yeah. And I think one of the defining factors there will be, I think once the agreement is finalised between NBN Co and Telstra, there'll be a whole range of other... That'll spin. Yeah. Because at the moment, even discussions we're having with Telstra, they're not able to give us any sort of data on, sort of uptake that they've got in the region. So we, apart from our old census data, we don't know exactly what the uptake currently is. We've got a sense that it's obviously higher than 50%, which it was in 2006, but we're not sure on that. And Telstra obviously won't provide information because it's commercial in confidence. So I think once that, and I understand that agreement will be finalised, October. So I suppose we're not ready while the the Australian Local Government Association has prepared some, guidelines in terms of what councils need to do, what their relationship might be with NBN, how to get ready. We're not resourced to do that. We don't know where all the infrastructure is, and obviously because of the commercial issues around the current relationships between Telstra and NBN, they're not going to tell us. So in order to make it efficient enough for us to, be ready to go, that's a real hurdle for us to get over, because the expectation is that, council should do it all, with the RDA. And that's probably unrealistic, especially in a rural and regional sense.
Okay. Deputy Chair.
Just a question that I know was put to you earlier today, but now we have you formally in front of us.
Yep.
when we were out at the new film studio site, the question was put to you about why it's such an important site, and knowing the benefits to the council, to the community, to the site of having fast broadband, why the council wouldn't choose to just spend the money and do it themselves.
Well, a good question, and as I responded, we've done that already in other council service locations where council's gone, after initially having difficulty endeavouring to achieve something through Telstra, we've partnered with the local electricity provider, which is now Essential Energy, who also run their own fibre optic network, and partnered with them to service our more remote sites. So, airport, swimming pool, library. So a lot of the digging and cabling that's been occurring the last couple of years has been related to that. So that was council's, a cost that council undertook. I suppose when we were building the business case around the film studio, the discussions with the filmmakers were, well, what are your specific needs? They said, well, in the interim, pre any sort of major rollout of optic fibre, these are our requirements. So what we're submitting is that unless we have this broader network that's available for a whole range of businesses and isn't a sort of piecemeal or patchwork approach, that's our concern, because, again, council's got to make the investment. Others may well tap into it, but I suppose we're not in the business of providing the telecommunications network. I know that's changing. We have this discussion about public phones with Telstra all the time. They say, well, we're taking them out. And we say, well, why? And we say, well, for these reasons. And they say, well, you can provide your own if you like. We struggle enough, local governments struggle enough as it is with their core business. Why are we being encouraged to, expand other infrastructure? That's a real concern. It's just another cost shift from not just government, other levels of government, but also providers that should be providing it under a requirement in terms of minimum service levels. So that's in response.
Can I just clarify a point on the film studio investment? Was the investment made and the risk taken? Use the word, interim arrangements for communications.
Yep.
Was it made in light of, were decisions made with the expectation that there would be some sort of significant increase in ICT to the film studio, or does the business model of the investment made by council stack up all on its own if nothing changed? If it is what it is today.
Yeah, it stacks up. It stacks up on its own in terms of our consultation with the filmmakers and the major filmmaker who was to be involved, who said, well, on the basis that in Broken Hill you've got this level of telecommunications infrastructure, you're not able to provide it at this time. We're able to use this satellite and other technology to do what we need to do.
Yeah. But they're not under an expectation of some
No.
sort of time frame or some sort of...
They're not, but obviously it would add value to the whole business case for additional usage if the NBN infrastructure, high-speed broadband was in place.
Improved. Yep, sorry.
Just one last question. I know everyone will have other questions. I appreciate the council submission that you've highlighted the benefits that would come from the NBN to your community. Having inspected the backbone or the backhaul and heard some of the capabilities in relation to that, are you expecting in the interim for the NBN is fully rolled out in Broken Hill to see some benefits in the near future from the backbone becoming operational as well?
Well, absolutely, and I think this relates to my earlier point about what the relationship is going to be with Telstra in terms of this piggybacking on their existing system. Now, the issue for us will be in terms of any services we have, and in fact the community in South Broken Hill where copper is availability of existing copper lines is an issue. Aluminium was used in some of those locations, so there's no scope for sort of building on the existing network there. So that's a concern. In terms of council's operations, our current upload and download speeds are limited by the ADSL2 system that's in place here. Obviously, some of the speakers talked about this, the intermittent nature of ADSL. The asynchronous, I think, is the correct term. It's asynchronous. That is, it's intermittent rather than a constant sort of stream. So our download speeds at the moment are around 20 megabytes per second. And our upload, which is probably the more critical one, is around 1 megabit. So that's difficult in terms of, we've got about 200 users in our network at various sites, so that makes that limits the day-to-day operation. It also limits the teleworking, whether it's away from work or away from home. So, bring on the 100 megabits. I mean, that'd be fantastic. I mean, even if it was, half of that, it'd be an improvement. So all those things that rural and regional communities, the travel that's involved, especially with local government business meetings and the like, all that could be done in the comfort of our hometowns, essentially, apart from the great interaction for face-to-face meetings. But half of the meetings a year could be done in a teleconference or video conferencing sense in real time. So they're real benefits for us in terms of travel, not just in the state, but across Australia.
Malcolm, do you have...
Can I just, Frank, can you tell us, remind us, how much of your local government area, how much of the residences and businesses in your local government area will be covered by the NBN fibre footprint?
The fibre footprint, as I understand it, will come into Broken Hill as the backhaul.
But in terms of the fibre to the home rollout, how much? I mean, your town is going to get fibre to the home, right?
Yes.
Yep, fibre to the premises. Yep. How much of your town, of your local government area, will get it? Do you anticipate that'll be all of it, or most of it, or?
Well, all of it is the expectation.
Right.
Again, I understand it's the opt-in provision in New South Wales, as I understand it, in terms of access to the to the technology. But of 10,000, 10,000 assessments or residences, essentially, including business. So
you're expecting them all to be fibred up?
We're expecting that, and we've got to have a strategy that obviously makes that, planning for that, making people understand it and achieving it as key outcomes of the strategy.
Okay, thank you.
Just quickly, Frank, what's Council's sense of where the thresholds might lie in the costs that people can afford? Obviously, a more premium product attracts a greater cost, but how, if you were advising NBN, would you structure, well, not NBN, but those who would then deliver the retail services that it would provide and factor all those costs in, of what types of costs people in Broken Hill could reasonably expect to pay or expect to afford?
Well, I've seen the sort of preliminary costs in terms of the internode that were released the other day. Again, the issue for us here is will be affordability in terms of household income, not dissimilar to the rest of the region. So our average household income is half the national average, essentially, for Broken Hill. So really, the big support for this NBN rollout was the fact that it would create competition and force down prices. That's the objective, and that's the reason for the support. So in terms of pricing, we'd be suggesting that there be some structured system in place that provides a minimum level of service that's priced at an affordable level, whatever that is in terms of the competition that's out there. And then obviously for greater speeds, access to maximum speeds, specific businesses or users that require it, structured appropriately. So that would obviously cost more. So that's the model based on our affordability that we'd be suggesting to the pricing.
Good, thank you.
All right, no other questions, I don't think. I think we're ahead of schedule, and certainly on behalf of the committee, appreciate the tour this morning of the film studio.
Yeah,
good luck with all the work there, and if you could pass through to the Mayor and Deputy Mayor and Council, our thanks for having us in town. We're all well fed, we're all had good night's sleeps, and met lots of lovely people, so thank you very much for having us to town.
Good, thank you, and thanks for taking the opportunity. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Frank. Now we might even have a couple of minutes just to stretch the legs. We're 5 minutes ahead, so just a short break. But if welcome representatives of the Royal Flying Doctor Service. And for the Hansard record, could you please state your name and the capacity in which you appear before the committee?
Certainly, sir. Chairman, my name is Clyde Thompson and I appear before the committee in the capacity of the Executive Director of the Royal Flying Doctor Service of Australia South East Section. And I'd like to have leave for my colleagues to appear, who will also announce the name and the capacity which they appear.
Sure. Gary Oldman, the IT and Communications Manager with our section.
David Perkins, I'm the Director of Research at the University Department of Rural Health, based in Broken Hill, part of the University of Sydney, and we work very closely with the flying doctors in research and training and education and the like.
And Dr. Michael Hill, I'm the Senior Medical Officer in Broken Hill in charge of emergency services.
Okay, well look, thanks all for coming, it really is appreciated and adds value to our work a lot that you've taken the time to be here. Although the committee does not require you to give evidence under oath, I advise you that these hearings are formal proceedings of the Parliament and warrant the same respect as proceedings of the respective houses. The giving of false or misleading evidence is a serious matter and may be regarded as a contempt of Parliament. The evidence given today will be recorded by Hansard and attracts parliamentary privilege. Do you have a submission that you would like to provide the committee?
We have, Chairman, we have 3 submissions in which what we will do is to send them by email to the Secretary for her records.
Okay.
We have circulated our annual report and there are some maps and photos available for the committee to look at.
Okay, thank you. And would you like to make an opening statement?
I would like to make an opening statement. Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for allowing my colleagues to appear. We will be having Mr. Gary Oldman, who's the manager of our IT, will give you a technical submission. And then Dr. Mike Hill, who is our Senior Medical Officer for Emergency Medicine, but also provides primary health care in our remote clinics, will also give you a submission. And Professor David Perkins, who is the Director of Centre of Rural and Remote Health Research at the Broken Hill University Department of Rural Health. From our Broken Hill base, the Royal Flying Doctor Service South East Section delivers medical services to over 640,000 square kilometres into 3 states. We have our corporate headquarters based in Broken Hill, which supports our operations across 6 bases and across 5 states in Australia. And we continue to be, and we are a high user of IT services. The facilities we have available are unsatisfactory in our view and are compromising patient care. The already disadvantaged communities we serve are falling even further behind. So therefore, Chairman, I welcome this opportunity to put our case for Broken Hill to be included in the first round of the installation of the NBN. And I would like now to hand to Mr. Oldman to address the committee with your permission.
Sure, thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and for this opportunity. Firstly, the Royal Flying Doctor Service, due to its remote area that we operate from, we've always embraced technology in order to provide the needs that we have to. We piloted radio medical calls many years ago, and we provided people living on the land and stations the access to the outside world. We've moved on from being a telecommunications provider to a telecommunications user, so we're up to the whims of what's going on around us now. 4 years ago, we embarked on a project to provide our clinicians with electronic medical records called Using Medical Director. We centralised the database and put it into one location, and we provided our clinicians with access remotely to these patients' records for the purpose of informed decisions. We provide this remote access using wireless USB broadband and then into our company system a program called Citrix to log on to the company. Now 4 years ago, this is what we were using, a USB modem. At the day 4 years ago, it was actually quite acceptable. It's no longer. So 4 years ago, we were probably the only ones in this area using these things out in the remote areas. So we had a bit of open slather to the network and whatever bandwidth was out there. However, with the influx of iDevices and iPads and iPhones and smartphones, they've all got NextG capability, so they're all taking their slice of whatever is out there. And we're finding that this reduce in bandwidth is having an effect on our clinical services. Over the last 4 years, our doctors have experienced the broadband getting slower and slower, even though the signal strength is indicating to them that it's full strength. Our staff have indicated today that they're losing now 30 minutes per day in their workloads compared to 4 years ago. And very interestingly, 4 years ago we actually gained 60 minutes a day by going from paper to electronic. So we're sliding backwards again. I understand that voice has priority over data on country cells, which might explain a few of the funny things that's going on with us, which we believe is a capacity issue, thus an economic business decision issue to increase this capacity in those remote areas. At the rate of decline of the broadband system that we're currently using, if nothing is done now, there's going to be a point in time where it's going to be unusable for us and our clinicians to use. And where does that leave our clinical services in these technological days? The Broken Hill area needs the upgrade now, not later, and otherwise it'll have a very serious impact on health of people living in our area. I note on the NBN infrastructure plan that it actually passes through Wilcannia, and I've indicated a map to you. I've drawn a circle. That's our operational area that we operate from this base out of Broken Hill. And there's only one node, and that's Broken Hill. Even just putting Wilcannia as a node, which is 25% of our clinical workload, would make a huge difference just to our organisation. I'm sure that Dr Mike Hill will be able to show you what the impact this is having on him and his daily work when he's out in the remote clinic locations. So I'd like to hand over to Dr Hill.
Mr Chairman, thank you for the opportunity to speak. Historically, the RFDS has provided medicine to people in remote settings since its inception in 1928. The organisation provided telehealth consultations before the term was invented by conducting consultations over the radio, initially by Morse code. Today, the organisation continues this service by providing consultations to remote people by accessing the doctor on the telephone. We provide healthcare to some of the most isolated people in communities in the country with some of the worst outcomes in health. To say that our clients are disadvantaged is an understatement. We have a vision to continue providing telehealth to our isolated patients into the future, but would like to modernise our approach to this. Telehealth has been identified as a future direction and growing need for our country. This is in an attempt to provide timely access to appropriate medical care. For most people, this might be considered a bonus in that their basic medical care is being taken care of, and this telehealth initiative provides access to specialist opinions. In our case, however, we need to provide the access to the basic levels of medical care. We would like to offer consultations not only by telephone, but by taking advantage of video conferencing opportunities, as well as the improved capabilities for data transmission of clinical information. The local health district is installing high-definition video cameras into its emergency assessment areas of its local clinics. We need to be able to have access into this high-definition video to enable us to assist rural nurses deliver emergency care. Just by way of an example, I've been put in the position where we've had women present in labour delivering premature infants at remote sites where there are no trained midwives on hand to deliver that child. Trying to explain to non-trained people how to deliver a baby over the telephone is not an easy prospect. And certainly the availability of high-definition video cameras will allow us to explain how to do it without trying to, well, talk through it. The RFDS also provides clinics to isolated communities, visiting these areas by flying out on a regular basis. In order to provide coordinated care, we need to be able to access our centralised medical records. For this to work, again, we need access to reliable broadband. These patients often travel to various cities for specialist appointments and investigations, and it can be a real challenge for us to get these results back from these areas. While it is easy to receive a fax back telling us the basics of what the X-ray or CT scan appeared to show, often it is important to actually see those clinical images yourself, especially when dealing with things like fractures. While all outback areas have access to a fax, we are certainly not in a position to download high-definition images of clinical natures at the present time. While access to healthcare is considered a basic right, it is important to remember that access in a remote setting means that that healthcare must be delivered at a distance by telehealth. Telehealth, if it is to be delivered with all of its benefits, needs fast broadband. I believe that it is important that some of the most isolated and disadvantaged communities in the country should not be disadvantaged yet again by being made to make do with existing inadequate systems. So thank you for listening, and I'd like to hand over now to Professor David Perkins.
Thank you for your invitation, Chairman. Rural and remote residents have the worst health outcomes in Australia, and even with the exception of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders, whose health is poor in cities and in rural areas, that difference in health outcomes lies in the access to and the use of healthcare services. Fast, affordable broadband services with large bandwidths can help service development, education and support of the workforce, and rurally based research to provide evidence about how to reduce this gap in health for both Indigenous and for non-Indigenous populations. Dr. Hill has described how a fast broadband can enable a doctor to provide real-time support to a remote nurse or a health worker as they deal with an emergency. We've worked with the local health service to evaluate the use of remote video assessment of patients in mental health emergency situations. These patients can be transported 700 kilometres to Bloomfield Hospital in Orange, and the nurse and the doctor who is looking after them in their home, they're better off at home. And these sorts of transportation decisions can be made much better if there is video assessment in real time, and people can be cared for because they're often better off where they live and where they come from. Residents in remote communities often travel considerable distance for specialist appointments when they have life-threatening diseases. And some of these visits may be averted if they can have a remote consultation. But these remote consultations require reliable broadband and high-definition video. Remote area nurses are critical to our health service. They're generalists, they provide a variety of care, and they often manage the local hospital as well. They require regular updating and training, more so than nurses who work in a specialist team in the city who have that hierarchy of skills down the corridor. For instance, they need to be able to provide palliative care in small communities a few times a year. They need to be able to manage pain. They need to be able to deal with the family and perhaps spiritual needs of people there. But they need to have those skills even though they only use them irregularly. They may also be called on, as Mike says, to deliver a baby, to support patients with chronic diseases, or to deal with a road traffic accident. Good broadband services can help them receive training in the workplace, in, as it were, a virtual classroom of their peers, which is not possible at the moment. In Broken Hill, we provide extensive clinical training for medical, nursing and allied health students. And the training takes place here and it takes place in the surrounding communities. And our aim is to improve the rural workforce and to inform metropolitan providers about the needs of rural residents and about rural practice. Good broadband for these students enables clear connections with their home universities, but also increasingly they can link in with the best universities around the world because these facilities are becoming available. One key to safe, quality rural and remote services is the expert, skilled supervision of staff. Staff are there on their own, and supervisors who visit by plane can only be part of the solution. They can't come every week. And so these visits can be supplemented by online supervision where the parties can see each other, where they can see resources together on the broadband system, and where they can meet with groups of peers, again in that, as it were, in that virtual classroom, which is available on a very regular basis to their peers in the city. Finally, and close to my heart, is rural health research, and researching rural health access problems and new service models requires teams of experts. We don't have them all in Broken Hill. And we work extensively with teams from Sydney, Newcastle, Orange, Lismore, Moree, Bendigo, Alice Springs, and overseas. The ability to work collaboratively to supervise PhD students, to attract and retain postdoctoral researchers, and to undertake research that's both nationally competitive but practical and makes a difference to the health of rural communities and remote communities depends on good, reliable, fast internet services. And so we're also hoping that we will be in the first wave, as it were, because this, we hope, will make a real difference to rural residents and to the rural workforce and to addressing this gap in health. Thank you very much.
Okay,
Thank you,
thanks.
Chairman.
A very slick operation from all four of you. You're up for questions now, or did you
Yeah,
want
we're
to
up for questions. Just, Chairman, that we hope that that submission articulated our need for broadband networks here to maintain our emergency medical services and our clinical outreach services, together with the training of medical students and allied health services in a remote setting. It's essential that we have access to that technology to maintain the benefits that we are actually now providing and producing for the next workforce for the rural areas.
Okay. Look, we've got about 15 minutes, so I'll just... a question I've been asking previous presenters, and that question is the amount of consultation you've had so far with Department of Broadband, NBN Code, Department of Health. You know, are they in your corner on this issue? And if so, what sort of expectations have you been left with to date in regards to the NBN rollout, better ICT generally?
There's a short answer to that. I'll find out if any of my colleagues have actually had any correspondence.
I've had no, from my position as IT manager, I've had no direct contact. No one's actually sort of rung up and said, Gary, what's your needs out there? We rely on connectivity to go and find these things out ourselves. These opportunities are absolutely paramount to get our case across. More consultation, I think, is much needed to at least allow people to understand that our needs out in remote areas are very, very different to the needs in city areas. But in terms of consultation, very little.
Same across the board? Or?
Yeah, there's a deafening silence in the consultation process.
Right.
Can I just follow up on that? You said no one's contacted you saying what are your needs. Have you made any approaches to the Department of Health or to the Department of Broadband? So have you taken the initiative to make any approaches and received any response?
I guess from the university perspective, we make two sorts of approaches because our broadband comes through the health service, and our experience is frequently that video conferences die, and that you get everybody together and it doesn't actually work. And we've spoken on many occasions, and there is a very tricky sort of set of firewalls. I think we counted 36 between us and Orange in that system. So that's one major line of problems. A second line of problems is that we do have a direct line to the University of Sydney for teleconferencing and the like. And when it's not used, we take the plug out the back and operate in that way. But that doesn't enable us to operate with remote researchers, remote staff, remote nurses, remote training. So, because the issue is the connection in that direction.
Chair, just on that issue, is the RFDS participating in the New South Wales NBN task force?
No, we're not. We haven't. No, we're not participating in that. We have made some overtures to the people in the NBN and who are looking at the rollout sequence and we've asked to be moved further up in the order of the rollout, and we haven't had an answer from that yet. Yeah.
Do you advocate through the university channels, or do you advocate through the health channels normally? Like for aviation, where do you normally
normally
do your business?
We would try and find us. We would try and go in direct. We also go through the Department of Health, but we find quite often we will get a better audience if we actually go ourselves, and also through the university, because we find that we can get a better audience if you combine it with the university for training and the health as specific to us rather than the wider health network.
Okay. Do you have any?
I guess just because of the nature of what you do, where you go, you're talking predominantly satellite access?
Well, in most of our communities that we attend, it's actually NextG wireless that we're actually utilising. There are a number of locations where satellite would be necessary, but in the vast majority of the communities, it's actually NextG that we're using.
Okay. One issue that we have with satellite, because of the nature of the way that we access our systems, is through Citrix. There's a latency issue through the satellite, a delay, and that can have an effect even more so than slowness.
Okay. And just when we're talking about health, my question to you is, are you when the technology becomes available, have you got the facilities, the resources to use the full capabilities of faster broadband?
Answer is yes.
We have, depending on the price of it, of course.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
right.
Always
Yeah.
depending
It's a
on
very
price.
price-sensitive issue for us. Yeah.
Okay. Well, who does pay the bills?
It's a combination of Commonwealth funds, our funds, and the state funds is to pay the bills. But usually the shortfall is always met by the Flying Dot service.
Thank you.
Local member.
We had some evidence earlier today which raised out as to the NBN's provision of teleconferencing. Have you had any information one way or the other? And how important, I guess you've already given us that information, how important is teleconferencing in delivering the services that you need?
From a management point of view, teleconference is very important because that would reduce the amount of travel time we have and information sharing. But as far as medical delivering in training and in delivering of medical services, I think I'd like my colleagues to speak to that because it is important.
Yes, I think that idea of the virtual classroom is what we are looking for, the ability to be able to bring people together. Because as I said, for instance, with our remote nurses, they are expected to do everything and very often manage the hospital as well, and they may not have, they may only have a couple of palliative care cases a year. But when that happens, that is critically important to their position in the community, to the families who are being cared for. And those sorts of connections, when there are accidents, the ability to put together those connections are very important. And you do that in two ways. One is by having real-time support, but the other is by putting the training in advance. And many of our colleagues will drive 300 kilometres for a day or two's training. And they can't do it for everything. There needs to be a balance of that face-to-face and of that work back in their workplace, because often we can't backfill them, even if that's the case.
So just following on from that, as an example on the ground at Packsaddle, you gave us some great photos. What have you got on the ground at Packsaddle?
At Packsaddle itself, we set up our clinic in the local little huts that are provided by the Roadhouse, and we use their facilities. They've got an aerial that they've mounted on an old radio mast where they've stuck an extension cord and a little sort of car aerial for NextG. And that's how we access it.
They've done it themselves, have they?
They've done it themselves by making their pole higher and higher to try and sort of tap the nearest tower.
And that's how you talk to them? That's how you do your business?
That's how we do our business.
Right. Sorry, Malcolm.
Gary Oldman, question. In terms of the bandwidth you need for the video conferencing, for the virtual classroom type experience that Professor Perkins and Dr. Hill have been talking about, most of the, I would think just about all of the area you're talking about from an NBN point of view will be served by satellite. And what they are proposing is a downstream peak information rate of 12 megabits per second and an upstream peak information rate of 1. Is that going to be enough for your purposes?
If it's for the purpose of training, probably yes. If it's the purpose of consultation and Mike wants to see very high definition of a patient at the other end, maybe not.
Well, this is a pretty big, if that's the case, this is a pretty big issue because part of the, there are many parts of the cities that have got very good broadband now and can, satisfactorily do video conferencing and so forth and do. But your area, the applications you're talking about is the kind of textbook case of the argument for an NBN, isn't it? And what you're telling us is that the functionality that's being offered or proposed is just not going to be able to achieve the need or satisfy your need. That is a big issue for us to take on board.
That's very much the case at the stage. What is in our favour, if there is anything, with the new technological advances and the algorithms and the compressions that they're getting now, they're able to do a lot more than they can, say, 4 years ago to get through that same bandwidth, but wider would be greater.
Just through Mr Chairman to take up on that point, I think what Mike Hill is referring to is some of the high definition video conferencing that we need will not be available under that the satellite link that you've described.
Yeah, well, that's, you know, that's right. I mean, no communities are more subject to the tyranny of distance than the communities you serve, by definition. So I think it's an important issue, Mr. Chair, for us to take this on board, because part of the promise, part of the, you know, the government, the NBN's promise has been that this technology will resolve this issue for you, but it appears that it is not going to be enough to do the job, and that's a pretty serious issue. Now, it's unlikely that the next G, you know, what will become a 4G wireless footprint will be there to take up the slack. So it's really either the NBN satellite or nothing, I suspect.
Yeah, it would appear that way.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
and
that's
along the same lines, Mr. Oldman, do you have Nirvana in mind? You know, just as far as if this isn't it, then what is?
Well, if it's not satellite, then if 4G, I don't know what the specifications, and I'm not sure what is planned for country towers, but if they could get capability through those, there is an existing infrastructure there. Although not everywhere, we have a couple of clinic locations.
We're in a relatively flat country, aren't we? So,
but we still have some clinic locations where there is no connectivity whatsoever, so that makes it harder.
Can I make a suggestion to you, Mr. Oldman? I think it would be very helpful for us, and I think probably long term for you too, if you were able to scope out the communities that you serve and describe the places that you need to get the high definition video conferencing that Prof Perkins and Dr Hill were talking about earlier, and then describe what you understand your minimum bandwidth requirements are going to be, recognising they're likely to be almost certainly delivered over satellite. Because that would be we could ask you to do that for this committee, that would be very helpful, because we can then raise that with the NBN. Now, they may say, don't worry, you can do it over this, we could do it over the, the peak information rates we're proposing, or there may be some tweaking that they can achieve to deliver you what you need.
Yep, certainly.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, we will come back to you on that, Chair.
Great,
Okay.
Thank you, Professor Thompson.
Look, I think, are there any other questions, Ursula? Have you got? Look, really good presentation, so I appreciate that, and thank you for jamming it into 30 minutes, and sorry we didn't have longer. And with that additional information, if for this process you want to have it included, if we could get that information back by the 8th of August, that would be greatly appreciated. If you can't, we can deal with it separately. This is an ongoing process that we're involved with as an oversight committee. But for this reporting period, 8th of August is a bit of a deadline we've set ourselves. So thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you.
It's
Thank you,
very
Chairman.
much appreciated.
And we offer an invitation for you, and particularly you, as your father used to work for the Flight and Service, to visit the base here at the Flight and Service, or to visit the training unit, the teaching hospital.
Even for a B-class citizen. Thanks.
Even for a B-class. That's right. From away.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thanks very much.
Okay, I now welcome the representatives of the Far West Local Health District Board. And for the Hansard record, could you please state your name and the capacity in which you appear before the committee?
Yes, thank you, Mr Chairman. My name's Dr Steve Flecknoe-Brown. I'm the Chairman of the Board of the Far West Local Health District. I crave your indulgence to have by my side Sharon Cowie, who is our telehealth manager.
Pleasure.
Because I'm conscious of the fact that I don't know as much about this as she does, and I don't want to unconsciously tell fibs and contempt Parliament.
Sure. No, you're more than welcome. Just for the Hansard record, if you could state your name and in the capacity in which you appear.
My name is Sharon Cow. I'm the manager for telehealth. and I'm also the acting manager for the electronic medical record support team for the old Greater Western Area Health Service.
Okay. Well, thanks to you both for appearing. Although the committee does not require you to give evidence under oath, I advise you that these hearings are formal proceedings of the Parliament and warrant the same respect as proceedings of the respective houses. The giving of false or misleading evidence is a serious matter and may be regarded as a contempt of Parliament. The evidence given today will be recorded by Hansard and attracts parliamentary privilege. Do you have a submission you'd like to provide the committee?
Ms Carey and I have agreed that we will have a submission for you by the 8th of August.
Okay.
There's more than we can cover in the
time given. Okay. And would you like to make an opening statement?
Yes, please. Yes, please. The first observation I'll make is that I appear to be the last speaker for the affirmative, and my job, therefore, appears to be to convince you that our need for connection to the national broadband network is both great and urgent. And I don't think that any of the groups that came before me would have any difficulty with that proposition. You've had the chance to see a fair bit of this city, and even just the trip out here should have convinced you of the challenges we face with distance. That, of course, is why so many of the previous speakers were so grateful to see you here, rather than having to travel there. It's one of the biggest challenges we have. It's also, I personally think, one of the blessings we enjoy. It's a great place to live, and we have a lot of advantages from being so far away from a lot of the nonsense that goes on. You'll also have noticed that this is a very substantial place. This magnificent building, foundation stone laid 1901. We've contributed a lot to this country. It's likely to be our first federation city in Australia, and we're not going to become a ghost town very soon. So, whatever investments are made in Broken Hill will be worthwhile. And again, I'm going across the broad scope of what other speakers have mentioned. I'm the chairman of the local health district board, so most of what I will say will relate to health, and you've already heard very, very powerful presentations from our partners, our very effective partners. Winnemar Health is one of the most effective Aboriginal health providers in the country. They work very well with us, and they in fact have a contractual relationship with us to manage the remote services that they mentioned. And the Flying Doctor Service well and truly deserves the status that it has as one of the world's best known iconic names. And we do work well together. Every Far West local health district facility has internet connections, has video conferencing facilities it's fair to say, state-of-the-art equipment. And as you heard Dr. Hill say, they're all being installed. The emergency rooms outside of Broken Hill are being installed with remote cameras. It's important to understand these are not just video cameras. They are controllable remotely by the flying doctor at the other end, so that they can capture not only the colour and the expression on the face, but they can look over and see the monitor display and the actions of the nursing staff and where the lines are and so on. It's a very valuable piece of equipment that's going to do a lot, bearing in mind that they might be handling emergencies in Ivanhoe and Tibooburra, all points of the compass from their base. So we also do a lot of our business by video link for obvious reasons. These are long, dangerous roads with great big heavy hopping things that jump in front of you without warning, and we don't want our people out on the roads for longer than necessary. We want them to be able to do their work together. And the video conferencing facilities are vital to us being able to maintain an informed, a wide awake and a healthy workforce. You'll be aware, or at least I hope you are. I hope that the point that Professor Perkins made is clear. The health status of our people is among the poorest in the nation. Particularly cardiovascular disease, diabetes, kidney disease, and cancer. Look, I'm proud of the work our people do, and I have absolute confidence that we are going to do a lot better in dealing with the lifestyle factors that underlie a lot of these things. But the simple fact of the matter is that the further you are from a capital city, the lower your life expectancy as a rule, and distance is undeniably a factor of that, a part of that. So, as the Honourable Malcolm Turnbull pointed out, this is the promise of the NBN, and this is why it's so important for us to be here to convince you of its value to us. The other thing that was touched upon by other speakers, but I want to emphasise in my presentation, is that the Commonwealth Minister for Health recently announced Medicare benefits to support video conferencing from remote locations. Up until that announcement, which came into place at the beginning of this month, Medicare benefits only applied for consultations in the same room. So if we're going to use that to its full advantage, if we're going to take full advantage of that, and yes, an area of some 35,000 people cannot support all the tertiary services you need, so we do need to bring in outside expertise, and a lot of that can be done by video conference. We've got to have high quality connections to do it. Look, the most graphic example of that is radiology, because radiology was able to set up and take advantage of high capacity broadband transmission of images. There's a company in Australia that offers a service that is really brilliant. They can transmit the image to any one of their stations throughout the world. They have a station in Melbourne, one in Mumbai, one in London, one in New York and one in Los Angeles. So that at any time that an image is acquired, it can be viewed in high definition by a wide-awake radiologist who, with Australian registration, working in one of their offices, who will then get a report back and actually can get on the phone and talk to the referring doctor within minutes. But you've got to have the connections. There are connections like that in Melbourne and Mumbai and London and so on, but they're not here. We used that service for a while, but the quality of the images began to degrade, and that comes to the point. When I came here 12 years ago, and this is where I will get Sharon to tell you the details of how this was set up. When I came here 12 years ago, Broken Hill had and Wilcannia had the fastest, best, most capable internet connection in the health system in New South Wales, and that's because they recognised how important it was for remote communities to have it. Sharon, you gave me some information about it. It was an initiative that came and then passed on.
Wilcannia and Broken Hill were pilot sites for the New South Wales Telehealth Initiative program. In those days, we struggled with providing services to our remote communities. Obviously, the Telehealth Initiative was introduced to bridge the gap, to close the gap between metropolitan and rural and remote sites. In 1995, we were able to provide those services on a regular basis to those between Broken Hill and Wilcannia. And we grew that network to have over 54 video conferencing telehealth services and facilities around the then Greater Western. Greater Western has maintained an ISDN, Telstra's ISDN network to support that. That was the New South Wales Telehealth Initiative standard in those days. From that time, technology has advanced significantly. Our metropolitan partners are now moving to IP. There's a mismatch. We can't connect our ISDN video conference sites to IP. So we are now losing clinical services to our communities. So, initiative where we were a forefront, we're now falling behind.
Almost every video conference that I attend is interrupted in some way by either image degradation or interruptions in the connections or the sound, and it's becoming really frustrating.
Where are you based?
Broken Hill.
You're based here.
Based here at Broken Hill. No doubt you've seen the wonderful slick video conferences that occur when there are good connections with live data loading and images as well as presentation. So for us to become the sort of centre of excellence in medical student and allied health education that I want us to become, because we have an opportunity there, we have got to have those connections, those quality connections. We've got a very loyal group of alumni from the University Department of Rural Health. Professor Perkins was rather modest in his appearance, but we have a very good reputation amongst the tertiary education system, at least in medicine. But we can't keep it up if we can't keep up the connections. And I don't need to tell you about the importance of good quality connections with administration, except again to emphasise that we want our people on talking to each other rather than on the road. The other thing is that it's not just teaching, but it's the stuff that we feed off. Us people who have been in medicine, we're lifelong learners. We're sponges. We've got to be meeting and talking with our colleagues all the time and learning and access to information from multiple sources. And really that collegiate teaching and learning has been one of the greatest delights of my being here. Very much involved and would very much like to see every option for keeping this developing available to us here. There's an enormous amount of high quality material that's sort of around, and I mentioned to Sharon one of my favourites is a monthly broadcast from the New South Wales Public Health Unit called Bug Breakfast. It's about infectious diseases. When we started linking into it broadcast to about 40 sites around New South Wales, and initially every site was a two-way link when appropriate. And at the end of the formal presentation, the 15 minutes of question and answers would go out to each peripheral site, would have the camera on them, and they would be obliged to either ask an intelligent question or admit that they didn't have one. Right? Now it's a case of phone in your questions and we'll answer them when you can. Well, guess what? Not many questions come from the peripheral sites. It's no longer that challenging interactive environment that adults learn from. But I'm sure that sort of degradation in the quality of the educational experience has occurred across the system for the reasons that Sharon's mentioned. Finally, I'm going to put on another hat, the more general hat. It hasn't been mentioned. I think it's very important. In this city, so far away from the capital cities, we have a very poor participation rate in tertiary education. tertiary education is not just job training to get just so that you can get a better income. It's all those liberal arts experiences that teach people to solve problems, that turn them into lifelong learners themselves. And if you can't get a group of 30 kids to join in a philosophy 101 class, you're not going to have one, right? The ability to have quality links to real education is vital to the future of this city. Is vital to the continued not just intellectual development, but the foment that goes on in an informed community that allows people to make informed decisions and to critically evaluate the information that comes in. It's a little bit off the subject of health, but it's a subject very close to my heart. So that's our formal introduction.
Look, sorry about the kettle. Thank you for that, and particularly your final comments aren't off topic at all, and the overall submission, as a regional MP myself, are of national significance, not just Broken Hill significance, so thanks for that. Similar question to what I've asked others, the engagement and communication with NBN code departments, both departments of Broadband, Department of Health. Who's in your corner? Who's doing your bidding? What's the relationship been like? What are the expectations?
After seeing the article in the newspaper, the local newspaper yesterday, that this committee would be here, I asked a question of the Chief Information Officer for the Greater Western Area Health Service. We're still in an interim mode with IT. She had heard once about some sort of communication from the NBN, and that was a phone call last week where she'd missed the call. She returned a call to them providing a number of dates or times where she would be available to discuss whatever was needing to be raised in that phone call. She's yet to hear back from them.
Okay. I'm a reasonably informed member of the local community. I've heard various rumours, nothing official. Ranging from a sprout of blue cables outside the city somewhere to another rumour that it's turned left and headed to Perth and it's not going to be coming here for a long time.
Do you believe any of them?
I'm so glad I was here today. What we heard from Frank was very reassuring.
Great. Deputy Chair.
I probably agree with everything you've said.
Susan?
I think it's terrific that we've had emphasised the importance of telehealth. Do you have a set of specifications that would indicate what you need?
Yes.
So at some stage you could provide the committee with that?
Yep.
In other words, when people say NBN, that can mean a range of different things, but the parameters of fast broadband that you would need in order to manage the telehealth that you would like to do in the remote locations that you have mentioned.
And the question from the Honourable Malcolm Turnbull to Gary Oldman in relation to education. Gary suggested that there may not be a need to have quite a high bandwidth available for education, but we've actually found with services that we deliver across our network is that we need the same sort of quality, because otherwise we lose the participants. If we can't deliver a service that doesn't pixelate, doesn't drop out, doesn't engage the participants, then it's almost as bad as not being able to access that anyway. So we've actually internally put our own standard on it where we have to have the same quality for clinical and for education.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and there was another earlier question, how NBN ready is the town. I can't speak for the town, but I can certainly speak for the health service. Absolutely ready.
Yeah, I didn't ask you because I got that message in your submission. I thought you were ready to rip. Yeah. Ursula?
Yes, thanks, Chair. My question actually goes to that point a little bit, and it picks up on what the Royal Flying Doctors were saying about them trying to engage with you through the health system and then
Firewalls.
Firewalls.
Yes.
Firewalls between them and Orange, wherever it was. So my question really is the extent to which Broken Hill may or may not be in community, and the extent to which you as a department may well or may well not be NBN ready. But what about the interactions between organisations in ways like that? So in and out of the education system, the higher education system, the health system.
I am a little concerned about that, in that, as an example, the general practices and the Royal Flying Doctor Service use a different electronic medical record to the one that's mandated in New South Wales Health. The Royal Flying Doctor Service and the local general practices and Morima use another laboratory, pathology laboratory, which is a completely different information system to the hospital's one. We can get around those things. We can certainly get around those things if we've got a quality platform to work from. But
really, why would that make it easier?
Or I can't promise that the politics is easy, but the offer of something that allows what was supposed to be part of the national health reform, that is full exchange of clinical information, is the way we get around it. Sure. Yes, there's politics and there's all the other commercial influences that don't come into the public system but do come into private medicine and private pathology.
You don't mean party politics, you just mean everyone wanting to protect their own
that's
self.
right. Yes, that's what I meant. Yeah, that's what I meant.
Do you have, and I think by the message of today that Broken Hill as a community doesn't have a format where, and it's following on from Ursula's question, where basically this occurs without a bunch of politicians coming to town, where you've got the council, the RDA, Murray-Mar, Flying Doctor Service, yourselves, university, education providers, just sitting around a table, chewing it over. What are the key priorities? Lamps up the back in private business.
Yeah.
Is there that sort of format where that is occurring or could occur?
I would suggest that there's probably, on a clinical side, there's probably a better networking.
But I'm talking more at a community level, like out breaking down a few of those firewalls by just sitting around and on a semi-regular basis and chewing it out. Is there?
I think RDA has shown superb leadership in this. Yes,
right. In trying
without RDA, this particular subject wouldn't have been discussed by so many people.
Yep.
Yes, with what Sharon was saying is that at a clinical level, at an administrative level, all of the health providers in this city have not only have good communications, but are nationally known as a team. I've been in medical politics for 30 years, and I've never seen a more cohesive group of doctors and nurses.
Right. How many specialists are in Broken Hill, roughly?
You mean living?
Oh, so most are FIFO, most are flying.
We're more fortunate than most country, most rural areas. We have 5 specialists living and working here.
Right.
There's also a number flying in and flying out. We've also got you'd have to say people like Professor Perkins and his head of department. There'd be another 5 senior academics living and working here, not working with patients but working with public health research and teaching.
Okay. Any other questions from anyone? Look, I think you've successfully lobbied and advocated, so well done. And thank you for attending today. And was there a question on notice? I don't think there was for you guys. But if...
The parameters in this.
that's right. There was one. The parameters to come back. So if that could come back by the 8th of August, if you want to participate in this round of reporting from this committee. But certainly thank you for your time today, and it is appreciated.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, so I just need a couple of motions approved. Is it the wish of the committee to authorise for publication, including publication on the parliamentary database, the proof of the transcript of evidence given before it at the public hearing today?
Yep, I'll move that.
Thank you. Can we move a motion that... do we need a motion on the submissions? Is it also the wish of the committee that the submissions in Globo be accepted as evidence and authorised for publication?
Yes.
Yep.
Thanks. Do we need exhibits as well? Do we need it as two separate ones? Is it the wish of the committee that the exhibits in Globo be taken as evidence and included in the committee's records as an exhibit? Yes. Thank you. Thank you, colleagues. Thank you, witnesses who are still here, and declare the public hearing in Broken Hill closed. Thank you.